I'd like to call the meeting to order while we're trying to get set up on the Zoom, so we don't end up staying here all night. Once we get set up, I believe Mark and Christina are going to join us on the Zoom. And in the interim, I'd like to take a roll call as to who's, easy for me to say, as to who is here for the FinCom.
King here.
Andy here.
Austin here.
Miller here.
Shepherd here.
And
Mark and Christina are on the Zoom, right?
we're not having any success.
Mark's?
Oh, Mark's here.
Mark is here.
Okay.
Mark can hear us?
You've got your microphone on.
Says it's on.
Mark, can you hear us? Excellent. Okay, so, and for the Capital Budget Committee, roll call?
Wait here.
King here.
Shepherd here?
Miller here.
Austin here.
And it appears as Mark's here, but I'm not sure he can hear us.
Can you use the chat function? Joe, use the chat function to see if he's with us.
Before, I'm not a really sophisticated. Type your message here, Mark. Okay, so,
You need to put a plus sign in front of
I'm beyond that. Okay, so the first course of business is to approve the minutes from the February 20th meeting. There were a couple of edits that Lynn had suggested. Valerie has made those. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
All, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay, then we're going to move on to our other agenda items. We'd invited representatives from the DPW, Police, and Historical Commission to come in and give a brief overview on their budget proposals, and as they've done ongoing. And we really appreciate your time. We'd like to kick it off with Ryan, the superintendent at DPW. And Ryan, the floor is yours.
Excellent. Good evening, board members. I just wanted to state that as the DPW board, we did also post a meeting for tonight, as all three of our board members here, Andrew Parker, our chairman, Blaine Brashad, and Dean Day. So we did post our meeting just so that we were all on the up and up as far as open meeting laws go. But again, thank you for having us down to discuss our FY25 capital and operating requests. If you don't mind, I'll start with FY25 DPW capital. If you want, I'll start there and kind of work our way down the list, give a brief overview of each project, and as always, happy to answer any questions. So the first one is the Route 140 and 62 intersection project. So you guys are very familiar with this project. It's been on the capital budget for a number of years now. This is what's called the Massachusetts Department of Transportation TIP project, or Transportation Improvement Plan. It's a program where the town pays for the design work, the state pays for the construction work. This project is a bit unique in that it is one of the first projects to go through a new program with DOT called ICE, or Intersection Control Evaluation, which is the reason why it seems to be moving a little bit slower than we had anticipated. So there's two phases of that ICE. We are nearing completion of phase 2, and then we will be getting into the meat and potatoes of that design, which is what that money that you probably see from FY24 is like, why isn't this being used? That's why it's not being used. It will be used before the end of FY24, not all of it, some of it. And then this money will be to finalize that design piece. So $45,000 is what we're proposing for that project for this FY25 to keep that project going. We are nearing the point where we're gonna get a date for this project from I say from the federal government, really from the state, and it looks like it's gonna be around the 2027 timeframe. But that makes sense. By the time the design's through, we're already in 2024. By the time they bid the project and start construction, that about lines up.
That would be the start of the project?
Yeah, that's the hope. Yep, that's the hope.
Do you know yet if it looks like we need to take land from people?
Don't know yet. It wouldn't be people, it wouldn't be residents, it would be something with DCR more than likely, based on what we're seeing on preliminary designs. Do you want me to take questions on individuals, or do you want me to keep going?
Keep going.
Okay, the next one is for what we call swap loader bodies. So in FY24, we were approved for what we call a hook and haul truck. This is a truck that can take numerous different bodies very quickly. You drop one body off, like a dump body, and you put the leaf box on it, the chipper, or the sander. It is a very versatile piece of equipment. We were approved for that truck. We purchased that truck. It's sitting in Lancaster right now, ready to get upfitted. Unfortunately, when we were quoted for that truck, we were misquoted, and they did not include the bodies in that quote. So this is to purchase those bodies. This will get us a dump body, a new sander with the proper controls for that, and a leaf/chip box. So just to give you guys an idea, right now we have a truck that sits dedicated just about all year for brush chipping. It has a big box on it. It's really only used for leaves and brush because we could respond to an emergency at a moment's notice where we have to take care of a tree and we need to be ready. This truck will allow us to be able to switch very quickly where we could use this as a dump truck on a regular day. And if we have an emergency, in a couple of minutes, we could switch that over very quickly, go out and take care of our emergency, come back, use the truck, more versatile. So this is gonna be a huge improvement to our fleet for sure. And like I said, the truck's already ordered, it's delivered, I've seen it. Not paid for it because it's not done, but it's in upfitting at this point.
Is that the truck 34, Ryan?
Nope, this is it was ordered last year. That's truck 9 from last year.
All right, so it was on last year's.
Correct. Yep, which is why it's already delivered.
Is there any additional this year in the way of capital to outfit that truck?
That's the 65,000, the swap loader bodies. Yep,
Truck 9.
yep.
Truck 9 then.
Is that how it's listed on
Yeah.
what you have? Okay,
Listed
okay.
as
Sorry, truck
9,
9.
truck with plow and hook and haul with leaf, chip box and
Yep.
dump body.
Yep, so that's 65,000 from this year. That will finish that purchase out.
Now, does that truck tow a chipper? Is that how it's
It
set
does,
up?
yep.
Okay.
Or a leaf vac.
And we own both of those?
Yes, yep.
And they're compatible with the old?
We will make them
Box,
compatible.
okay.
Yep, yep, so they're standard
Same
items.
hitches?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So the next one is the truck 34 that Mr. King just mentioned. That's the replacement of a small pickup truck in our fleet. This right now is a Ford Ranger. It's actually one of the most used trucks that we have. It's great for pothole patching. The summer help kids use it all the time. It's just a really versatile truck. The mechanics use it quite a bit. Smaller, easier to work with, and we're proposing to replace it with the same style vehicle. Small vehicle, and essentially it would, it's a support vehicle, if you will. Very versatile, used, like I said, every single day. This truck does not plow snow. It's not, the size to plow snow, but it's used all the time.
So that's the 50K addition
Yep,
on your capital.
yeah, that's the replacement of a truck, yeah. Next item on my list is the cemetery wall evaluation study. So we're proposing for that money to come out of the sale of cemetery lots. It's to perform an evaluation on 2 of our cemetery walls. One of them is very visible, it's along Clinton Road. It holds up the Oak Hill Cemetery. And the other one, not as visible, it's in Reed Cemetery, and it holds up the access road from Maple Street to Clinton Road. The one that holds up Oak Hill is the most concerning. We find pieces of that wall on the sidewalk time and time again. If you look up close to it, it's something that needs to be addressed. The question is how. right? It's a old cemetery, it's a big wall. How do you properly do that? Does it need repairs? Does it need replacement? And that's where this evaluation study comes into play. This will give us options as to how to properly, support that cemetery, and it'll give us some ideas of pricing so that we can properly budget for it in the future. So that's that wall evaluation study. The next one on the list is for the replacement of 2 more lawnmowers. So the DPW currently owns and maintains 10 lawnmowers in our fleet. Last year we were given funds to purchase what we call the wide area mower. So that's a 12-foot wide mower, and we were able to get that mower relatively early in the fiscal year, which was great. They had a unit on order. We were one of the first ones to request one right after town meeting, and we were able to get that mower in July, which was awesome, opposed to some towns have waited months for their wide area mowers. So we were really happy to get that. It's proved extremely beneficial. What used to take between a day and a half for multiple employees can now be tackled by one employee in about 5 hours. And we can go out on a Friday afternoon, tune up all our fields, weather condition pending, and be good to go. That being said, the money this year is to replace 2 of the smaller mowers. So we go from the largest to the smallest. These mowers are primarily used in places like the Common, the Memorial Park, and the cemeteries to get in between the stones. Like I said, this is to purchase 2 or replace 2 of our smaller mowers. They range between 36 and 48 inches wide, so 3 feet and 4 feet. It's about what you'd see a typical landscaper riding around on in there, doing someone's yard. The next item on the list is the small asphalt paver. So this is proposed for the cost to be split 50-50 with the Water Enterprise Fund. And we're proposing this money to come out of the sale of used equipment fund, which is when we sell a piece of equipment, the money goes into that fund, and then we use it for purchasing in the future. We're seeking to purchase this small asphalt paver, otherwise known as a sidewalk paver, to perform patchwork townwide. So this paver will eliminate the need to hire an outside contractor for some of our larger pavement patches. This is not intended to eliminate a road paving contract. You're not going to pave a road with this, but if we replace a culvert that is curb to curb and 20 feet on either end, we can now pave, that culvert. We can take care of that patch, opposed to hiring a contractor. Usually we hire like a driveway contractor to come in. It might cost somewhere between $3,000 and $5,000, depending on the size or how many loads of asphalt they need. We can now take care of that. The reason that I want to split it 50-50 with the Water Enterprise Fund is because we can use it on water repairs. So water repairs typically end up being minimum 10 by 10, oftentimes larger, depending on the severity of the repair or the severity of the issue. So we would use this to make repairs for that side as well. So like I said, not to replace road paving. We're not going to go out and pave a road with it, but we can do a number of versatile things with it. I think over time it'll pay itself back. Yes, sir.
Do you have trained staff, Ryan?
Not at this time. Nope. But we would get training from the company, and I know a lot of other towns have started on something like this when it comes to paving. Quite frankly, I don't intend to get bigger than this because at that point, this can pave 6 feet wide. That's pretty wide. If you do 2 passes, you're doing half a lane. So at this point, no, we don't have anyone trained on it.
Yeah, it's just blending with the old pavement is an art.
Yep, absolutely. But right now, we're raking everything, and everything's hand placed, and it's labor intensive. It's not. You lose some quality control. You lose some consistency in it. So as you're raking, our guys we call them looting. They're really good at it, but it's still difficult when you're doing a wide, expansive area. For example, like in front of Appletown, we brought in a paver for that because we thought it'd be better to have a quality job right in the center of town where we know we're going to get a smooth, consistent finish.
Does this contain a roller as well?
It does not. We already have the roller,
have
so we would use the roller that we have in conjunction with it.
Is this just a very scaled down version of the big pavers that I see?
So, did you get the cut sheets that I provided with my budget? So it's a small version. It is on tracks. It gets loaded with a skid steer. We have the skid steer. The hopper isn't, so a truck is typically 8.5 feet wide. The hopper's not that wide. So you load into a bucket of a skid steer, you dump into the hopper, which is probably this big, and then your screed can go anywhere from, I believe it's 3 feet, because a sidewalk's typically 4, up to 6 or 7 feet wide, adjustable, and it would allow you to move right along. So yes, it's a small version. You don't ride on it. You can ride on the back, but typically you'd ride next to it or walk next to it with the controls.
What kind of life does that have?
I would put that around a 20-year life, mostly because of the hours that would be on it. So a lot of our bigger equipment or our equipment like that is between 15 and 20. This one isn't going to be running every single day, so it's not going to gain a lot of hours like, say, a loader would, or a backhoe or an excavator or something like that we would maybe use every day. So similar with like that wide area mower, where we use it a couple times a week. We don't use it every day, so it doesn't add up the hours like some of our other mowers would. Moving on to the updated pavement management plan. So in 2021, the town completed its first pavement management plan by surveying roads townwide and assigning them a score as to their condition. Since that time, myself and our board members have used this plan consistently to make decisions surrounding what the roads, what types of treatment the roads need, and what roads, how we would prioritize them. The goal here is to keep good roads good, right? It's not to only do your worst roads, it's to do a mix of poor and varying conditions, and to keep the ones that are in good shape, because every day that you're not replacing that road, it's getting a little bit worse. Roads don't improve themselves. So when that plan was done, it was relatively rudimentary. It was simply a windshield survey. The people assigned it a score, and it was a great stepping stone into the pavement management world. We have used it enough and we've seen the results from it that the board has made the decision that we really want to go more in depth. We want to do a more, I'll call it sensor-based survey. So this brings in a vehicle, has thousands of sensors on it. It gives a more consistent approach as to what we're looking at. Ride quality, cracking, it sees all that. It takes video of every single road and photos of every single road. So that stuff's all in that database. You get a more consistent approach to the report itself. It also, when this was done in 2021, there wasn't a full-time superintendent. The town administrator kind of took it on, and the report that we got is a little bit difficult to read. Not how I would set it up, we'll put it that way. So now that we know what we're talking about when it comes to pavement management, it's time to step up and do the next step in it, and that's do this more advanced survey, and that's kind of where we're at there. I think we've seen the results from it. We've been able to allocate our funds across the board on whether it's crack sealing, milling, reclaiming, all the different kinds of pavement treatments, and we have some new ones coming up the next couple of years that will help extend our road money for more miles, if you will. So that's the whole goal for this system, and to properly choose what roads to pave and what grouping of roads each year. So that's what we're looking at there.
So is this 40K we've allocated, that's a one and done survey?
So that is the initial, that's the big one. We would probably want to update that every 5 years or so. I don't think it would be 40K every 5 years. But it would be, a bigger update, if you will. I don't have a figure as to what that would look like.
And between now and 5 years, can that database be updated by your organization?
That's one of the things that is critical for me, because I can't do that at this point. Okay. So our consultant who we were working with, we're lucky enough that I send them an email every January. They'll update it for us, but this is very simple. We should be able to update this, and it's very simple macros and whatnot to, degrade these roads over time. So it's interesting. We started with a PCI, or pavement condition index, of 71 in 2021. We went to a 74 in 2023. 22 was kind of the middle year. and now we're up to a 76. So we've made great strides. That's a lot of increase. And you look at the fact that we maintain almost 100 miles of road, 95 miles of road. So it's hard to make those great of strides, but we paved a lot of miles this year between the 140, 62, Justice Hill cutoff, and we looked at it and we said, how come we didn't make a bigger jump? It's because everything is degrading. You know what I mean? Now we're 2-3 years beyond. When we had a bunch of 75s, they're now all 73s or 72s, and as you take those averages, it drops down. So it's kind of I don't want to call it an eye opener, but it really drives home the fact that we need to be doing consistent work on our roads.
Ryan, do they survey the culverts and bridges before they make a recommendation on the roads, or is that up to you?
So that, the specific drainage items is up to me. This new plan is going to include data about drainage tied to that road. So we're gonna know if it's closed system, culvert-based, country drainage, paved swales, stone swales. We'll have an idea as to what we're getting into, so we can maybe take a neighborhood that has a closed drainage system that's a little bit simpler and say, okay, that project right here, this is kind of turnkey, right? Everything's in good shape except for the surface. We need to redo the surface. Where we look at a road like Justice Hill Cutoff that we just did this year, that requires 20 culvert replacements, numerous swales. It requires a lot of extra work. So we'll have all that data. We'll have a good idea of how many neighborhoods have closed system drainage, where it's catch basin, manhole, outfall, detention pond. They're not gonna look at every culvert. That would be a separate study. That's something that we do before we go and pave that road. So for the roads that we plan on paving in this construction season, we started evaluating those last fall. So we have a pretty good idea of what needs to be done, and we're still kind of working through some of that process as we get closer to the construction season.
Okay, that's an internal survey.
Correct.
then. Okay.
Yep,
Thanks, Ryan.
yep.
Are the database and system to maintain it hosted elsewhere? Like, is there a software cost to this?
Is it
Not a reoccurring special software cost. A lot of times these are in Excel or what's the other program?
Access?
Yes, Access. So those are what's typical. This company that we would be working with is one I'm familiar with, and it is a Microsoft-based hosting.
So would it be hosted on our servers somewhere?
Yeah, it would be a file, right? It's not cloud-based, it's not proprietary or anything like that. There are companies, and I've had experience with them in a different town, that are proprietary, and they're very difficult to work with. And it costs a lot of money, and it's not what it's sold as, unfortunately. So that is something that I'm definitely sensitive to.
Ryan had sent out the 21, 23, and 24 pavement management booklets that I forwarded to everybody here, so you should have a copy on your email,
It's on the website.
It is on the website, yep.
okay?
Just posted it this
So you can just go in there and look at them. They're pretty nice,
Yeah.
easy to follow.
The issue I have with it is they broke all the roads up into different segments, and the segments are hard to follow. They broke Kendall Hill Road up into like 15 different segments, and it was from this driveway to, it's not, I would rather keep it road to road or cross street to cross street, keep it consistent. I understand what they were doing, but I think with some more input from our staff, we'll have a better quality product. The next item on our list is to install a columbarium at Hillside Cemetery. So this was a request that a resident brought to us early this fiscal year, and we talked about it with the board, and we thought it would be a good idea. So a columbarium is essentially above ground cremation internment. This has benefits to the residents, which is who our cemeteries are for, and lower purchase prices, lower interment costs, and it also has benefit to the town, less land use used for these particular things. This is an expandable project. Right now, we want to start with the 50,000. That would allow us to construct approximately 80 spaces. It's 2 towers, 40, I say towers, not too tall, about 40 spaces each. And, we would come up with a design that we would be aiming for in the future. As those filled up, we could add a couple more. Just to give you guys an idea, we surveyed about 12 different communities that have these columbariums. The spaces range from anywhere from $500 per space to $2,000 per space. That's a decision that we would make at the DPW board and update our rules and regs for the cemetery. That comes out to about between $40,000 and $160,000 worth of revenue based on the $50,000 spent. So of course, we wouldn't price them at $500. We would be losing money. We would price them at a rate somewhere in the middle where we could continue to make money for the cemetery to put back into the cemetery. So that's kind of the way we look at that sale of cemetery lot.
Is there an annual maintenance fee that someone pays for those, or is that a one-time, you'll get the $500 or whatever the box is, and that's it?
It's one time, much like they do with a lot right now. So there's when they take a lot, when someone buys a lot that's a grass plot, there's a chunk of the money that goes into what's called the perpetual care fund. It would be very similar, but technically there's less maintenance here than there is on the, no mowing, no trimming. We're trimming around 40 different people opposed to each individual stone. So it would be structured very similar to the sale of a grass plot. And we would propose that to come out of the sale of cemetery lots back into the cemetery. The next product is for some Sweat Hill drainage upgrades. So Shoalin Park, otherwise known as the town beach, has been seeing significant erosion over the years from stormwater flows. The Conservation Commission, in conjunction with the Lake Association, began the design on a detention pond project to help retain some of the stormwater from Kendall Hill Road and Sweat Hill Road and control its release due to these high stormwater velocities. It's also in the DPW's pavement management plan or pavement plan that we have Sweat Hill Road on to pave within the next 5 years. I believe it's in the next 2. But that will not be completed until this project is done. These funds are to bring the project to a final design level, get a cost estimate, and hopefully bid the project. Once we got the cost estimate, we would be able to actually put in a number for what it would cost on next year's capital budget. I carried a number. It's a number. I don't know how accurate it is, but I think on an order of 20%, which is what a contingency would be at right now. High, low, not sure. But getting this to this point would allow us to put in a number, much like how we handled the cemetery wall. I can't tell you what a repair of that cemetery wall is going to cost until I have an evaluation of it. I can't tell you what this is going to cost until it's done, the design's done. It's close, I say close, it's probably 40 to 50%, and then it's sat for the last 3-4 years. Like I said, the Conservation Commission started this project. We've kind of taken it over because we feel it should come under our purview.
So 530,000 is for design only?
No, 30,000. I don't know where.
Yeah, the 500.
500's next year. Yeah, I'm looking for 30,000. It's finished the design, cost estimate, bidding. So we wouldn't propose to do any construction until next year.
Oh, that's because you
To bond
combined.
it, yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, so without knowing what the actual cost is gonna be, I mean, it could be 320,000, it could be 550,000, I don't know. It also depends on how far we go with it, right? We have a pretty good idea of the scope right now, but there's obviously plenty of things that can change when we go to final design this. And the last item on the DPW side is the lease buyout of the skid steer. We've had a lease skid steer for the last, well, it'll be 3 years. Coming up next year. This machine was primarily purchased to clear the sidewalks downtown. It's been a good machine for that, but we also do use it all year. So it's been a good machine. It's got low hours on it, and for $35,000, it's very economical. This will decrease we have a line item in our expense budget, which is how we pay for the lease. It's about $1,200 a month. We also pay for it out of snow and ice during the winter months, so this will eliminate the need to pay that payment, which will be nice. So that's one of the reasons when I get into operating, why our operating budget increased so little. I was able to take a little bit out.
Okay, so it is taken out of the omnibus
Yep.
entry that you had on expense?
Yep, it already is accounted for. Yep.
Thank you. On a couple of your capital items,
Yep.
we are considering rolling forward the $500K for the Sweat Hill and bond that to to give you access to all 530K in one fell swoop. The same thing on the cemetery wall, as well as rolling the 100K into the 10K to come up with 110K in total for the evaluation plus the work.
Yeah.
So we
just-
have been considering.
Yeah, just be cautious because that number's a placeholder until the study is completed, right? So I don't have any, it's a placeholder. I just want to be very cautious about that. It may be that I have to come back next year and we need 200,000 for that and, you know, and 300,000 for the Sweat Hill instead of 500. It's a complete placeholder at this
So
point.
be it.
Yeah.
We're considering that you're bonding anyway this year, that we would add to that bond because you are gonna bond for
Yeah.
1.3 million.
For the water main, yeah.
The different, would that be a 30-year, 40-year project?
Sweat Hill.
Oh, I think the bonding's typically 20 years though, right? That's what we've been doing.
It
I know
would
it's
be
the
at
water
least-
main was
it would
last
be at
time.
least 15, right?
Yeah, that stuff I leave to Fred and Bill to figure out.
But we are considering that, so you may end up with that as a final financial. plan.
Okay, yeah, I just wanna make sure we're clear that it's a placeholder.
It's a
You
good
know,
guess.
Right, and I understand that like if it's less, it can always come back, you know, I can always unauthorize it, right?
Yeah.
I just wanna make sure that, I don't want to come back next year and say, hey, this is actually 620 or this is actually 230. They're like, well, we already bought 100, that's all we get, you know what I mean? Cause that'll stop the project pretty much, so.
No,
I just wanna make sure we're on the same
There is
page.
always next year, Ryan.
There always is.
Could I ask you what the status is of the new DPW facility?
Sure, so we've actually been talking about it at our board meetings. You're gonna see a posting probably in the next month and a half for solicitation for board members to create the DPW facility committee. And that committee is gonna start rolling with the process of evaluating what we have, what our needs may be, locations, pricing, renovation, new construction, all that kind of stuff. So stay tuned for that. Keep an eye on anyone who's watching, keep an eye on the website for boards and committees. And we'll be taking applications and reviewing those and creating that committee. But you should see that in the next month and a half or so.
What kind of time frame would you see actually taking action?
Oh, just from my experience, having built one in Holden, I started on that committee very early on when I first got hired, and I never moved into the building and I was there for 5 years. So I would say shovels in the ground, 5 years minimum, probably more, depending on the complexities, land acquisition, anything like that. I would love to say it's sooner, but having been through the process, I understand the challenges, whether it's town meeting votes, overrides, that whole thing. It's a complicated process. It's a big project. It's bigger than a fire station. It's bigger than a police station. It's more akin to a school when you're starting, and it's not as fun of a project for the parents. You know what I mean? So we understand that, and we're prepared to do what we need to do to sell this project to the public and make sure that people understand the importance of it. But it's going to be a process. So that's where
You
we're
think
at.
the money spent so far have been well spent towards?
Honestly, so far, we haven't touched the 50 that we got last year. The board will be taking care of that, the new facility committee, sorry, the committee. And to date, we've spent $12,000, $16,000. We have renderings, we have space needs, we have quite a bit of work. We're actually ahead of where we were when I sat on my first DPW committee meeting in Holden, so I feel pretty good about that. And I can tell you that the need is absolutely there, and for anyone who's interested, I'm gonna be doing another Dull Men's Club presentation in April, and it'll be all about the building. So,
So it won't be a dull men's.
it won't be dull, it'll be very exciting.
Brian, while you're here, can you also update us on the cold storage building? Because
Absolutely. So we finally found a contractor who fits in our pricing. And it's a steel building, size that we're looking for, 40 by 60. We got quotes that work. However, we can't just hire somebody. They're prevailing wage quotes, which is great, so that's important for us, but we need to bid the project because of the size of it, right? So the town of West Bridgewater, I believe it's West Bridgewater, had a exact same size building that they bid in 2020. So we have been in contact with them. We're gonna take their bid specs, which will be very helpful for us, and then we'll be able to package that up and put it out to bid. So again, I know there's been a lot of delays with that project. It's just been
30%.
one of those things that is, not at the top of the list, and it always tends to sit in the middle. So, I apologize for that, but myself and Bill are committed to seeing it through, if you will. So that's my update.
Yeah, it's very important though, because you get a lot of equipment, not only your
Yes.
equipment, but other town equipment sitting
Absolutely.
outside all the time.
Absolutely.
This is the one that the police and the fire wanted?
Yes.
I thought they were gonna fill it all up.
Well, it's essentially, they had 3 bays, we had one. It'll be full, I promise.
You won't be able to park a lawnmower in there.
No. So, I'll move on to operating, if you guys are ready. All right, I'll just go through line by line, again, so we'll start with snow and ice. We're continually making small increases to get it ever closer to the actual historical spending. I don't think it's prudent to get it all the way there, but I think it's prudent to get it closer. So we're proposing a $10,000 increase, about 3.77% over last year. For the last 2 years, we've done $20,000 increases. Bill asked me to keep it a little bit lower this year, which is understandable. Of course, this item, we spend what we spend. We do everything we can to keep that spending down. We try to make educated decisions on when we're out salting, when we use overtime, things like that. But unfortunately, we take what winter gives us. So far this year, so good. That could all change in a heartbeat, and next winter could be totally different. So that's what we're proposing for this year. The DPW salary line item, I know there's some questions on that, so I'll kind of give you a brief overview. Last year, the salary line item for the DPW did not include any step increases or any performance or merit increases in it. We were asked by the town administrator to remove it from that line item. He carried it in an item somewhere else. When we go to put the FY25 forward, it now has 2 years worth of those increases, because next year's increase, or prospective increase, is now in that budget. So it now has an FY24 performance review increase and an prospective FY25. Those are, I'll call them prorated for when my anniversaries are, so it doesn't cover the whole year, and I calculated out essentially to the penny of what it's forecasted. So this, just in summary, this one reflects 100%, includes the 3% base wage adjustment and the performance increase given in FY24 and the possible one given in FY25, changed from how it was done in FY24. So that's why it looks like it does. Won't look like that next year, didn't look like that last year. That's kind of where that goes. No change in the DPW board stipend. The DPW wages, this item includes all the hourly employees for the DPW, which is everybody except for me and the water folks. It's inclusive of the 3% base wage, along with numerous performance and merit increases for those who are eligible per the town's personnel bylaw. So it's actually about 1% less of an increase than it was last year. I think last year we were at 7%, this year we're around 6%. DPW streetlights, that is a decrease. That comes right from SMLD. They let us know what they think it's going to cost, and that's what we put in there. Trash pickup is just like everything else, increases a little bit each year. There are 4% escalation clauses in the contract, which is where primarily those percentages come from. This contract brings us through the end of 2026, so we'll start more discussions after that. Regional recycling, so I still have this at 0 because I believe we have 1 more year where we can afford it with grant funds. However, they change the structure of those grant funds, we don't get as much as we used to. So we have some money banked up for recycling items, we can cover it again. Don't be surprised to see that $4,900, $5,000 come back into the budget, possibly next year. We're gonna keep an eye on it, I'm hoping it can get covered. This is something that gets used by our residents, we are one of the biggest users of this recycle center. I can tell you, we get calls on it all the time. If you look, they track their data very well, and right next to Holden, we are number 2 as far as the users, probably because of our proximity, which helps. But it's just nice that, you know, it's a good resource to have. It helps with the overflow recycling, and people love the reuse center, things like that. It's relatively cheap, honestly, on behalf of the town. DPW expense, so overall we're looking at a 1.1% increase over last year. Overall, relatively minor changes across the board. Fuel projected costs have declined slightly over last year. I don't know if you guys got my fuel memo and what we're projecting for fuel. I sent that to all the departments. Vehicle maintenance, I've increased a little bit, mostly because of historical spending over the last couple years. As we have consistent line items that we track every year, I'm able to make more educated decisions on where to raise and lower our individual line items. And then, of course, leased equipment was reduced in anticipation of buying out that skid steer lease, and that will pretty much be not eliminated, but we'll keep a small amount of money in there for next year. But again, those items that I'm throwing out are just how we track we have about 25 items that we track in that expense budget on a warrant by warrant basis. And then finally, sidewalks and roads. So originally, actually at George's suggestion, we had put in $300,000 for the appropriation this year. Understandably, you know, that's high. I say high. Our goal is to get to $400,000 annually, but I understand we're pretty close this year, up against it. I wanted to kind of give you guys a summary of where we're at, Chapter 90 wise, what we're proposing to do. So in FY25, we're proposing to resurface approximately 3 miles of road. It doesn't sound like a lot, it is a lot. This will change depending on what we get for bid pricing and what we get for funding. So just to give you an idea, we have a paving bid that's out for contractors that using DOT's tools, which is how we estimate our projects, it's about $1.285 million. That's our estimate as to the bid that's on the street right now. There'll be an additional bid going out for a different type of surface treatment that goes in conjunction with this one, that's roughly $400,000. So we're looking high level estimates at about 1.7 million, 1.68 million worth of work for the construction season. Now, every time I've costed out projects using those tools, we get better pricing than those tools. So I don't think that we're gonna be getting bids back at 1.68 million. I expect them to be lower, but that's just giving you an idea of where I stand today. We don't open bids till the end of March. So in Chapter 90, as we stand right now, we have $289,228.52. That's what we have currently in our Chapter 90 bank. Through the fair share apportionment, we received $265,705. So that was extra money that the governor put in for, essentially, we got a letter one day and said, by the way, this is getting deposited into your Chapter 90, congratulations. Awesome, great, we'll take it. And then we expect to receive another roughly $441,000 in our annual Chapter 90 funds, and that typically comes June, July. So that would bring Chapter 90, if all goes well, to $995,933.52. If nothing gets spent out of it through July 1st. So that's essentially what we would have available to us this fiscal year. So as you can see, there's a gap there. We know there's a gap there. We don't structure our paving bids so that we're not able to award them, essentially, if we don't have all the funding. We itemize them, they're quantity based. There's a certain tonnage of asphalt, there's a certain square yards of reclaim, there's a certain number of catch basins and manholes to be raised and lowered. So it's all quantity based. If we don't use all the quantity, then it's cheaper. If we use more quantity, it's more expensive. Historically, we've used more quantity, but that's because we've gotten good pricing and we've been able to. So I just want you guys to keep that in mind. You know, like I said, roughly $1 million in chapter 90. We have, if I were to give you the best bet, between 1.3 and 1.4, maybe 1.2 and 1.4 million worth of work we want to do this year. So I'll do my piece as the superintendent and plead for road money up here, because we have a lot of big plans this year. We'd like to continue on with them. However, we're very willing to work with you guys is the best way to do it. What I can tell you is the roads and sidewalks money is invaluable to us. This is the money that allows us to go out and replace those 20 culverts. This is the money that allows us to cover the police details or do the pavement cores to get proper pavement thicknesses to make the educated decisions on the roads. This is the money that we don't have the chapter 90 money sitting in Sterling's accounts, right? We have this money. So it allows us to be able to buy those loads of gravel to do that work. We can't do that out of the operating budget. We don't have the money allocated for it. We only use the road and sidewalk money on roads to get resurfaced, right? We don't use it on a random catch basin repair across town. We don't use it on a water repair. We only use it on the roads to be resurfaced. So it's all in conjunction with those projects. So again, we're open to how the funding is, and we just want to make sure that we're on the same page with what our plans are and where we stand chapter 90 wise and whatnot.
Great for the insight. What would be very beneficial to the finance committee and the capital committee is to have a longer range understanding of it. We understand you got a gap this year.
Okay.
Do you expect to have a gap next year and the year after that?
I don't expect to. We tailor our plans, or the plan I sent the other day in the Excel sheet. That's tailored more on road miles. So, but this year, for example, Pratt's Junction's on the list. And Pratt's Junction is a road that is very heavy truck traffic, heavy traffic. It has 2 railroad crossings. It has a highway underpass. So some of that stuff plays into why the prices get driven up a little bit. It's hard to cost estimate out a project, and we could do it 5 years in the future because so many things change. So we kind of group, a number of streets and road miles together and say, okay, this grouping is about the size of what we can manage, and kind of keep moving down the line there. So, but if you're looking for something different, I can certainly try to get it for you.
Will that 3 miles fully pave Pratt's Junction?
Pratt's is about 2 miles, and then we have 5 other streets that we want to take care of this year. And again, that if we have less money, we'll take a street off. It's something that we might have to do. But again, this year, you look at those numbers, you're like, oh my God, we're shooting for the moon. This is a big year. It's just the way it added up. Pratt's, we were hoping to do last year. We ended up pushing it off due to some drainage issues. We think we had that stuff resolved, so we're ready to move forward with it. Unfortunately, like I said, some of the permitting stuff is a little tricky. The railroads, the highway, they're starting to lend themselves to a tricky point.
So we're bouncing between capital financing through a bond.
Okay.
Or expense.
Yep.
Expense hits the taxpayers directly. We can defer some of that through bonding or the capital appropriation on it. So the long-range guidance is really helpful to help us plan out how we're going to do a long-range plan right now.
Gotcha.
We had you penciled in for bond this year at 200K. And taking it out of the expense budget because of that direct hit to the taxpayers on it. We can defer that. But now I'm betwixt and between on what to do given the number and the fact that you have a gap and that 200K wouldn't even close the gap on it. Nor would your projection in this budget.
Well, it would make it much closer, right? And unfortunately, I won't know that until March 28th when I open the bid that we have estimated at 1.285. I can tell you last year, we had a bid estimated very similar, and it came back at 880. So there's that option, there's that opportunity. And we had 10 bids and they were within 150 to 200,000, which shows you that it's not an outlier.
So
That
the
may happen
event-
again. I have high hopes, but I can't.
Either the bond or the capital appropriation would not have an expiration on it for you, so that if you
Right.
ended up with a capital appropriation, you would be able to carry that over into next year. You can't do that with the
Correct.
omnibus. It flows back into free cash.
Correct. What I can say is that, you know, we plan to continue to ask for, you know, as we've been doing all along, some money each year. You know, our goal is to get to 400,000. We've been standing pat at 250, and that's fine, it's worked out. Our ultimate goal is to get there, but, we understand that we got some extra money from the state as well this year, so that does help.
So with 100 road miles here in town, and you're saying you're gonna do 3 road miles this year, that's 3% of that 100. Is that 100 road miles totally the responsibility of the town of Sterling?
That's our owned road miles.
Our own
Yes,
road
there's
miles,
more,
okay.
and it might be like 95 or something, I'm just
Okay.
giving an example. But it does not include Route 12,
Right,
obviously not
okay.
190, you know, none of that.
Okay, so 3%
Yeah.
of our road miles is being done annually. What's the lifespan of a paving?
So it varies a little bit. So the big chunk of that being Pratt's is gonna have less of a lifespan than some of the neighborhood streets in the northwest corner of town that see 50 cars a day versus Pratt's that sees 500 trucks a day. You know, so that does also, go back to how do we treat that road, right? So we're doing a pretty advanced, or we're proposing a pretty advanced treatment on Pratt's Junction that will hopefully make it last for 20 to 25 years. And then if we can go on our path of keeping good roads good, we can put 20 grand into Pratt's Junction in 15 years by doing a fog seal or keeping up with crack sealing and not have to spend 400 to 500,000 to resurface or pulverize that entire stretch again in 20 years. The curve for a road, if we went down to dirt, repaved it just like we did on Justice Hill Cutoff, and we never touched it for 20, they say 20 years, right? Vary depending on traffic. We would probably have to do that same thing again. Now, if we took care of it, they call it fog seal, crack seal, chip seal, other types of pavement management or pavement preservation techniques that are much lower impact, lower cost, it will prolong the life of the big nugget you just spent, which is building up the base of the road, right? It's just like building a house. You don't want to skimp on the foundation. And, that's kind of where we are here.
So to ask you to come up with a projection of how many road miles you want to do every year is a little difficult because it would somewhat depend upon the existing condition as well as the usage of that road.
Correct. So in the plan that I put together, our 5-year plan, it shows what we're proposing right now for whether it's mill and pave, full depth reclaim. There's something in there called like a modified chip seal. There's different pricing for all this stuff, and there's also different levels of effort, right? So a full depth reclaim, we're going to dirt. We need to work on all our catch bases, make sure everything is in good shape before we go ahead and do that work. If we do a chip seal or a fog seal, there's really not much work for us to do. It's just new lines at the end, because that gets covered. So, I can certainly provide you with the road miles that we're projecting. It's essentially, we've grouped these projects based on our pavement management plan to try to do a variety of different scores, and it's far from an exact science,
Ryan?
unfortunately. Yeah.
Okay, I'll tell you what I know about paving.
Yeah.
My car rides on it very smoothly. So I want to get back to money.
Okay.
Okay. Two things, and Joe touched on them at one point. When we had a discussion a while ago, I don't know if it was with Paul and I and you, or if it was here, you had mentioned something about a ceiling that your group could handle on a yearly basis of between 800 and 850,000 worth of road work, okay? which is understandable. Every group has a ceiling for project management, manpower, et cetera. So we took that to heart.
Right, I know, I'm aware.
And you're going to become more aware in a minute.
You were sitting right there. when you
Yeah.
said it.
Oh, okay, I'm prepared to respond.
I knew you would be. So, having said that, at that time, we had targeted the 250
Yeah.
from the town contribution, 450 from Chapter 90. That came up to 7. It was 100,000 short of what you wanted.
Yeah,
But you had mentioned you had a little kitty in the leftover Chapter 90s you could tap into, and this being a tight year, we figured, okay, we'll stick at 250, blah, blah. Ta-da! Magic Commonwealth of Massachusetts steps in, and the millionaires in the state coughed up some extra money. So we were planning on having a town contribution of 250,000, and the millionaires in the state said, wait a minute, guys, let us give you 267,000. And there was a joyous ring around us. Everybody was all smiles. So we figured, okay, we were originally targeting 700,000. Now we're at 715. So we can take away the 225 or 250 the town was going to do and save the town $250,000. Then we decided we don't want to get into that rut. Ryan said 800, we're at 715. Let's bring it down to 100. Let's bring it over into capital, which gives the town, not just us, but more flexibility on how do you fund it. And whether it's 100, 200, or 400, you have more flexibility. You can use free cash, you can use bonding, you can use the capital investment fund. So, and it extracts it from the operating budget, which is
Tight.
really close to being not balanced. Let me be delicate, okay? So that's what we did. We extracted it, the whole 225 out, which actually gave your budget quite a drop, your operating budget, on the face of it of what to spend, which worked out great. So now you still ended up with more road money than originally anticipated.
with the fair share.
Because the millionaires stepped up to the plate. And it's anticipated those guys are gonna keep pitching in virtually the same amount. Chapter 90 is gonna stay virtually the same amount. So we're looking at the town contributing probably 100, 150, maybe 200 if you're in a bind, which keeps us around the 800,000 manageable road work for your department,
Right.
okay, without hiring more people. That's where we are. So, we're thanking the millionaires. We're looking to the town to contribute 100 instead of 125, because they don't have to, the millionaires did. And that brings you up to 800. Your turn.
Well, you know, I guess chalk it up as a learning curve for me. I mean, so, let me put it this way.
Amplifying that, George and I went away and did a whole lot of planning around your 800.
I can see that. No one confirmed or denied, you know, whether I was sleeping at the wheel over here or nothing. It's just all our plans out the window.
So we can work with you, but we need to know what the guidelines are.
Sure. So there aren't guidelines, right? So let's back up. We've been through 2 construction seasons. We've been through 2 paving construction seasons, okay? This is what we have experience with. We have yet to tackle a road of the, you know, the caliber of a Pratt's Junction. Pratt's Junction is 9,600 feet long. It's just under 2 miles. It has like 5 drainage structures on the whole stretch, believe it or not, right? So this is, and most of it is country drainage, right? There's a lot of swales, there's a lot of stuff that falls off. So when you look at a road like that, or next year, we have Clinton Road on to get a surface treatment, you're chewing up a large amount of road miles and work that has nothing to do with our ability to keep up with drainage and things like that when I refer to my department's ability to keep up with a number of projects. It's kind of like how do I want to best describe this? You know, strength in numbers, if you will, right? So we're able to do a lot longer stretch of, because we're doing such a long stretch of road, it's going to chew up more of that contractor money, which is what drives this cost. We have no ability to pave the road ourselves. It's, no town does, right? We're driven by the contractors at that point. And it's all asphalt tonnage and square yardage at that point. And that's kind of what we're looking at. So I guess what I'm saying is there's not endless amounts of work for us out on Pratt's Junction. It's a road that really needs to get done. We have a number of smaller roads that we're going to tune up a little bit. I'm just going to say this year, of all the 3 years that we've been here, probably has the least amount of DPW intervention prior to work than any of the other roads that we've worked on. Kendall Hill required a lot. Justice Hill required a lot. Meeting House Hill required a lot. The couple neighborhoods that we're proposing this year are closed loop drainage. They're in good shape. They have concrete pipes. They have precast basins. I know I'm getting technical. I'm just saying that every project, every street, every situation is totally different. I haven't modified our paving plan based on the fair share money. I haven't modified it based on our conversations or anything like that. When I get to price it out, this is what it priced out at. It's one of those things where if we need to push something, when we get pricing back, we'll push it. You know, it's not something we want to do, but we're gonna come to you guys asking for as much as we can. So I'm sorry that I said what I said.
The point,
Don't take it literally.
beyond that though, forget your 800,000. Okay. Never came up. The original budget prior to the millionaires was assuming 450 from chapter 90
Yeah.
and 250 from the town. That's what was laid on the table at the beginning.
Yeah.
That did not get a negative reflex from Ryan, okay?
Yeah.
That would have brought us up to 700.
In New
We
York.
would, okay, we were thinking at the time that 800 was your ceiling, so we were a little despondent that we didn't reach the 8, but this year we could not go to 350, okay? And you know I started this ball rolling 4 years ago.
Yeah.
So then, after we had that original discussion, and 700 was what we were looking at, what you were looking at, that we were looking at, the millionaires stepped up,
Yeah.
okay? They replaced our 250 with their 267. Pennies from heaven. The state never steps up to anything. We've been looking at the school
Years
budget.
in a row, we've gotten lucky.
Yeah, all they do is step backwards in the schools. They stepped up for DPW and infrastructure. So we said to ourselves, now we have an opportunity to get up to the 800,000 and even trim the town's exposure
Yeah.
to it. So we did, okay? That's where it comes. Forget your 800.
Sure.
This is more than we had originally discussed. So,
Because of that fair share money.
right,
Yeah,
and I
understand.
appreciate the
Oh, I
fact
understand.
Pratt's Junction is an expensive road.
Right.
It is, like you say, it's got 18-wheelers on it all day.
Yeah.
And I know that the contractors are the ones that are gonna suck up all the money over there. But the plan you had before fair share, okay, hasn't changed.
Correct.
The source of the funding has. So instead of the town throwing in the 360, the millionaires are.
Yeah.
So your plan hasn't changed at all
Right.
from when you made it.
Right.
So there is no cutting of funds from our perspective. Actually, the DPW is getting more funding because of the millionaires and the town chipping in 100,000.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yes and no. It makes sense, I guess.
But
But what I'm gonna say here is that you'll notice that the plan I sent you the other day has no money on it.
I did.
There's a reason for that, right? So, you know, it's not easy to cost these projects out.
No,
This took me a sizable amount of time.
It's
I
a
don't
moving
cost-
target.
I don't cost them until now, you know, and if we got the fair share money or not, that 1.285 plus the 412 wouldn't change, right? It would make me sit here and say, okay, we're definitely gonna have to cut 2 or 3 roads off of this list to make it work, and that's discussions I have with the folks
Sure.
sitting behind me. But we're close, you know what I mean? And I look at that fair share money as like, great, here's a bonus. Every year we get XYZ from the town. We try to stay consistent. Like we said, our goal was to get to 400. We started at 200, 200, 250, 300, 350, 400. The goal was to slowly work our way there so that it's a reoccurring cost annually, every year. It's something expected. It's like appropriating a reserve fund. Different because it doesn't go back, but you know what I'm saying. Every year, it's a solid cost. That's the goal behind what we're doing. You know, you and I, or us and the finance committee are definitely gonna look at it in different ways. It's no different than if you guys came to me and said, oh, well, they're paving 140 and 62 for you, so there's all your road paving for the year. Why do we need to do any more? You know, you said you can do 3 miles. They did 3 miles for you. You don't have to do anything. It would be just like doing that, where instead we were able to do 6 miles and make great strides in our plan. So I look at the 265, 705 as like, this is great. I hadn't heard it's coming every year. If it does, it's a different conversation to have, you know what I mean?
And if we get more millionaires, Ryan, coming to the state, we'll get more.
We all working on it.
Which is, so we can discuss this back and forth.
Absolutely.
I think we both know what we're saying.
Right.
Okay, and we have a tough job this year
Yeah.
because we're right on the cusp, okay? So they helped a bunch for funding your department this year to the point that we had originally projected, which pennies from heaven. So, does anybody else have any comments or questions on?
And, yeah, I'll reinforce, we're coming up to the red zone here on our town meeting and everything else, so we really need to figure out what's happening this year, Ryan, okay?
In terms of what?
In terms of financing. George and I have talked to you about, we really are not in love with putting that 250K in the omnibus budget.
And that's fine.
It can't be
That's
done.
fine, yeah.
I mean, because that's
Yeah.
gonna, push us into areas that we really don't wanna
Yeah.
go, so.
What I can say is that it's gonna be a reoccurring request annually. How it's handled.
We get that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We intend to
We get
leave
that,
it.
and we're kind of committed to that.
Yeah.
The way, we had been talking to you about it is we were committed to the 800K number, which means
Okay.
in addition to that 700K that you find at the state right now,
Yeah.
we were gonna figure out a way of getting 100K every year in some funding mechanism for you, okay? To make it 800K. Now you're telling us a different number, so that's the first part of it. We're getting in the red zone for this year's planning, okay?
Yeah.
We need to settle this.
Yeah.
And the second one is a longer range view of sort of a steady thing that hits some number every year that we can kind of count on, so that we can do long-range planning on this.
But I know it's a moving target. Like you say,
I mean, that's.
2 miles of Pratt's Junction isn't 2 miles of Sweat Hill,
Right.
okay?
And that's something that honestly, and I'm not trying to tie these together purposefully, but hopefully that the new pavement management plan with more details and more data can help us get some better numbers.
Yeah.
I can tell you, if you look in that pavement management plan, there are numbers associated with each street. They're ridiculous. Don't even look at them. They told us it was gonna cost $3 million to pave Kendall Hill Road. It cost us $450,000. So where they come from, I don't know. I wasn't a part of the plan. But just don't look at those numbers, because if you did, we'd be paving a half a mile of road every year.
I was just looking at the roads.
Yeah, so on the right-hand column, there's numbers, so it's.
Well, we're
Yeah.
thankful that you're a very prudent shopper.
I can't shop anything. It's all shopped to us, low bid. So, but we've been very lucky with our bids that we have. We are lucky to have a pavement plant in town, which helps drive our costs way down.
Yes.
We get good quality and we get good pricing, and that makes a big difference.
And we have a great superintendent.
Oh, I appreciate that. So,
Anybody else for Ryan? Or are we gonna let him go to bed so he can get up early?
Anyone interested in water stuff, we can totally skip it if you want, that's up to you. It's enterprise fund, so, great.
No,
We
have to
are
raise the
interested, though, yeah.
What are you gonna have to raise?
Well, we raised the rates last year, we did a small rate increase, our goal is to do small rate increases going forward. We are still the second lowest water rate around, and we have some big work that we need to get done to catch up where we need to be. So,
Our water discussions, Ryan, happen to
fine,
roll around finance, not what you're doing.
no worries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Thanks, my friend.
Your last tranche, I will close with your last tranche of financing, however, was only for 10 years.
Oh, okay.
And you can go a lot longer than that and have a more beneficial effect
To the
on
rate
the
payers.
rate.
But Ryan has nothing to do with that. That's
Right.
Fred and Bill. We'll
Right.
discuss that with them.
All right.
Thank
Okay.
you all for
Awesome.
coming.
Thank you, guys, appreciate it. Keep us in the loop, please, if you have questions on the paving especially, so that we have an idea of what's coming. On March 28th, I'll know what the bid price is for that big job, so.
We know where to find you.
You do. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Ryan.
March 28th, you're not leaving us a lot of time there.
Plenty of time. Thank you.
Thank you all. All right, next on the agenda, I believe we have the police,
Not here.
Chief Gaudette. Okay, let me address Chief Gaudette. He has come to us a couple of times, and he has also given a dissertation over at the senior center, and I think he's been very clear on his request for capital and very clear on his operational.
Capital, oh, sorry.
So nothing that we've seen, that I've seen from anybody here, has come into question or looks like it really needs any further discussion. Does everybody agree with that we're pretty happy with Chief's presentation thus far?
I agree.
Yep.
Okay, so we'll move on. The Historical Commission, Catherine Harajian.
Sure.
The podium is yours.
Well, I guess I haven't met with you all, just we had an impromptu meeting, and I don't think you got all our information of what we were doing. And just to clarify that a little bit, we are working with the Land Trust to utilize the West Sterling Schoolhouse. That is our most important project at the moment. And our vision for that is really simple. We're not interested in developing it with a road and this and that and, sewage, plumbing. We only went out with a 5-year plan that went with possibly a composting toilet. But right now what we're asking for is just to complete basic maintenance on a town building that has significant historical meaning to the town as the last schoolhouse that's available. And all towns seem to have them. I was out in Plainfield, and they have a town of 565 people, and they had at least painted painted this one-room schoolhouse, and this is just basically what we're looking for. The educational aspect of the school is going to be continued with our work with the Land Trust. We want to work together and have it multi-use. We've been meeting there in the summer months when we can. And the Land Trust, they need space for their maps and whatnot, and they would have that there. But it would also be available to schools to come in for educational purposes. And, I know you've already kind of made up your minds, and I don't think I can convince any of you to change your minds, but we do have a few bids that were low. They were sole proprietors. You're saving money on the painting. It's a town building that needs maintenance. As far as the history goes, it's so important to our town and to our country, and I just think that it's overlooked if we let things go, that And of course, we appreciate your support for the cemeteries, because that's also part of our history. It's significant to the whole country, what has happened in Sterling, and I think that, we ought to keep it going. And Jim, I don't know if you have anything else to say about it, or?
I guess I could try. It's,
Oh, you can try, good.
the podium.
Yeah, you go.
So, I'm Jim French, and I'm involved with the Sterling Land Trust and also with the Historical Commission with Kathy. And as she said, the schoolhouse is the last of 11 one-room schoolhouses that this town has. It's the picture on the wall behind you, actually, is the schoolhouse. And it's what impresses us about that building is that it's structurally sound, historically significant, and of great interest to apparently most of the people here in Sterling based on the vote that was taken at the last town meeting to support it. So the Historical Commission seems committed to maintain the building. I know there are calls for specific long-range uses of the building, adaptive reuse, which we're working on, which is why we brought in the Land Trust, to look for a collaborative, adaptive reuse of the building that doesn't mess with its architectural and historic integrity. And we think we can do that. But in the short term, we need to maintain the building, and if it looks forlorn, then it's at risk of vandalism or worse, arson, which has happened to some of our other one-room schoolhouses. They just don't make it because they look abandoned. So, given the excellent condition of this building, and given that we have a viable adaptive reuse idea that we're pursuing, we're looking for support to maintain the building and to have it appear viable as part of its initial maintenance and upkeep. It has to have that street appeal in order to satisfy the folks in town who love it when they drive by it and would support the reuse that we envision for the place, if that makes sense.
So the reuse right now is the Land Trust wants to use it to store their maps and things?
The Land Trust, which has now been active in town for 26 years, doesn't have a home base. There's records and maps and files sort of at different people's houses and in different locations. And given that we're now a quarter of a century on, and we have multiple properties in town under our purview, and we have quite a number of projects that we're working on currently under the realm of open space protection, conservation restrictions, working with landowners. We have a landowner workshop coming up next month. We feel that we need to bring ourselves into a viable brick and mortar center. And the Land Trust bylaws include not only open space protection, but historic preservation. So it seemed a good fit, a good marriage to take a look at the building that is the West Sterling River District Schoolhouse and have it used for both Land Trust under the purposes as a center under the purview of the Historical Commission.
Two things. First of all, on the painting, because it's a municipal building, I may be wrong, but I believe you're going to have to come under prevailing wage anyway.
Well, according to the building facilities manager, if you can hire, if it's under a certain amount, I think it's 22,000.
Yeah.
You can hire a sole proprietor, if they're registered as such, and
At
that's
his
what
rate
this
that he
particular
quotes.
person is. Yeah, and the inside of the building, it's 6,000
Okay.
approximately. And
Our facility manager knows a lot more about that stuff than I do. Okay, if he said it's okay, it's okay. The other comment I was going to make as far as the land trust goes, to me, it would just seem that you would rather find a facility that actually has sanitary conditions in it, like a bathroom and water. Like, have you looked at the 1835 building that is totally underutilized? We've already spent, Lord knows how much money rehabilitating that. And that could be a real viable alternative to you. It's a historical building.
Yeah.
It's already been renovated considerably. It has sanitary facilities within.
A lot more storage capacity.
Yeah, I would think that would be more suitable for your trust than a building that has absolutely no facilities whatsoever.
And is environmentally somewhat controlled as well.
Yeah, I see your point, and it's a good one. My response is that in part, the land trust in consort with the Historical Commission is looking to establish a viable alternative use for the building so that it has a purpose. And the land trust board show us an interest in stepping up to help facilitate that and to give an adaptive reuse to the building, which has electricity. It doesn't have water, and that is a challenge.
It's more than a challenge, it's just not sanitary.
Well, a composting toilet is, and it's, I don't mean to butt in too much, but it's also significant, I don't want to get hung up on sewage, but it would be like an outhouse, and people could utilize it, and it's like the original outhouse that they would have. That's how it works.
Well, it's not like the original outhouse. The original outhouse was an outhouse.
I know,
not a
well, you put that
composting
look
toilet.
around it, but that would facilitate
This is-
taking care of.
I understand your point, but it still makes more sense if you're looking for a home base, which you mentioned, that look at the historical building the town has already spent hundreds of thousands of dollars renovating, that is totally underused. Okay, both of you could find a home over there for both of your commissions. There's plenty of room, isn't there, Lynn?
I would think so, but the problem, I guess one of our concerns with the West Sterling Schoolhouse is exactly what happened with the 1835 town hall. You know, you start out, you want to maintain everything historically correct, but then you need an elevator, and then you need, handicap access. And when I talked to Mr. Goss, he did say that, the cost to do these things that you've requested, which is the painting inside and outside, and what was the other thing?
The windows.
The windows.
Yeah.
Total is $34,000, okay? But if you needed to make it handicap accessible, that is a much bigger cost, okay? And now, if you make it a public use, does that require you to make it handicap accessible?
That's
if
something.
it's a town building, it might. That's what we got into with the 1835 town hall.
Yeah, that's.
And the library.
Yeah, so one thing, you
Snowballs.
start with a small amount of money, you ask for 11,000 every year, but these things start to pile up, and then you've got a maintenance cost or an operational cost if you try to make it something that really, truly is operational. Look, again, what happened with the 1835 town hall. We're still waiting to get to finish up the bathrooms,
Well, see, they changed the plan after the fact, and I know
They
that's
had
what
to.
you're exactly
Yeah, that's
saying.
exactly, the problem is it's not that it wasn't a choice, okay? It was kind of a snowballing effect of requirements of making a public building accessible to the public.
If perhaps we could look at it this way, if we do not upkeep the West Sterling Schoolhouse, if we don't glaze the windows, if we don't paint the building, then what? Even if the building, as so many one-room schoolhouses in other communities around us, they're painted and they're maintained, even though there's no regular use, but they are kept almost as if a monument, as a park or a monument where we invest in its maintenance for the sake of its historic significance. So if we don't paint the building and we don't fix the windows, we don't rebuild the front porch as we did this past year, and it falls off the building, then what? Then we're not addressing, in my opinion, the concerns of the citizens of Sterling who want to see that schoolhouse maintained. So at the very least, I would argue that we should maintain the structure and its integrity, and we can work out the details and argue over its eventual use and utility. But at the same time, if we don't do regular maintenance of the building, we're going to lose it. And I don't think that's what the people of Sterling want to see happen.
So I think you've got two issues.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
I have a question. I know last year the article was put on, the townspeople voted for the $11,000 for the maintenance. And your argument is that's what they wanted. But my question is, are they aware that it's going to be an ongoing $11,000 a year for the maintenance? Because that's essentially what you're saying. Regardless if we ramp it up and try to make it a public use with adding toilets and handicap, etc., but just, keeping it painted, replacing the windows every year, I'm going to assume there's some sort of piece of maintenance. So I don't remember the details of the warrant, but did that warrant specifically say this is going to be, it's not a one-time thing, we're going to constantly need to do this? Because I'm not sure if the voters were aware that it was a one-time short check the box, yay, we saved the schoolhouse, or we're going to be saving the schoolhouse in perpetuity.
It was a one-time, yay, we saved the schoolhouse, and it didn't have any money attached
Right.
to it.
There was
just
no appropriation last year, Christina, tied to that. It was just keep it or don't keep it. And that's what the warrant article talked about.
So I think there's two issues here. The first is the schoolhouse as a historical object that requires some amount of maintenance annually. And this year, because you're painting the exterior, it went up, and then there will be annual maintenance that you're not going to be painting every year. So let's say 11,000 until you have to repaint it again. That is maintaining a historical building just for the history of the building as a memorial within the town. And step away from finding a use, because as soon as you get into the finding a use consideration, then you have to start doing upgrades exactly the way that we got with the town hall. So I think that there is resonance to the town residents for maintaining a historical artifact called the schoolhouse that is somewhat maintained, but in no way, shape, or form upgraded. People can go by it, lovely, lovely sign, this is a historical artifact of how children used to go to school, nothing more than that. When you get into trouble is when you try to say, okay, it's more than a historical artifact. It's a historical artifact that we now are trying to repurpose for something else because we feel guilty about just having this historical artifact. And so we're going to find a purpose for it. And then you get all these upgrades and all these considerations and ADA compliance and those types of things. Think in terms of just...
So can I just interrupt for a minute?
Go ahead. I'm done.
The reason why they came up for a reason is because they were pressured by this committee to give a reason to keep it there. They didn't want to do adaptive reuse. This committee, and I will remind the committee that I reminded the committee last year, and I'll remind them again, that they kept questioning this commission saying, tell me what you're going to use it for.
Correct.
We put them in the bad position.
No reminding necessary, Paul.
Well, apparently it seems to be needed, actually, if you ask me. A few other things need to be reminded as well.
Well, if they
But
came back, Paul,
the
and said...
issue is, I'm not finished talking, okay? Can I finish talking? So they were put in that bad position about what use should be, so we should not be lecturing them on the use. They're the ones that said, we're the historical commission, we should keep it. The town said, we should keep it. So maintaining the building shouldn't even be a question. Now, if we want to be remiss in our responsibilities, so be it. And we can put it in notes that we're remiss in our responsibilities to fund the building and maintain it.
I took the minutes then, and I seem to remember that there was no proposals from them at all. And when the town said, without regard to funds, we want to keep it, basically now we're saying they're presenting a plan where they didn't have one before. And we're saying, this plan does not sound like we want, but the plan of perhaps keeping it historically maintained is perhaps a better way to go. Because we weren't remiss in asking for a plan when there wasn't one.
Liz has a very viable plan.
In terms of the being a historical building.
Yeah, so in asking for a plan, I think Liz has one. And that might be acceptable to
Just making a
everybody.
suggestion.
Yeah, make it a monument.
That's the use.
Yeah.
It's a historical building.
Perfect.
Okay.
But I think there was value in the dialogue to come to an understanding of what the pros and cons were of two approaches. And yes, I do remember saying that, there should be purpose to all town buildings. And a purpose is a historical artifact.
That's perfect.
So now talking dollars and cents, okay, because we eventually have to get there. We didn't appropriate last year. There was a proposal to appropriate 11 grand last year that didn't get appropriated last year. There was an earlier request for an appropriation of 11 grand again this year, but that kind of changed pretty dramatically, and the current number that we're talking about here is $32,000 instead. So which is it? And
We'll admit to a bit of sticker shock when it comes to reglazing 7 very large double-hung windows. A little bit of sticker shock when we realize the cost of painting, when it seems like maybe we could go in there with paintbrushes and do it ourselves, but it's not that easy. So, yes, it's a little higher than we had originally thought, which we cannot deny. We'll say, though, that if we can look for a silver lining, that every single one of the double-hung windows in that schoolhouse you can lift with one finger, because the weights and ropes and the structure of the building is so sound that no windows stick, everything goes up and down, and there's not one cracked pane. It just needs paint and glazing. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it's actually a lot of work to paint and glaze that many windows, hence the bid that came in.
Do you have any idea how long they last? I know that by painting and glazing, you keep them historically correct. Do they?
If done well, they should be 20 years.
And the ones that are there from the 85, it was the last time really any maintenance was done there, so it's even older than that. and they don't leak, so, I don't think that's a time.
so back to dollars and cents, is there any way to split the two requests up? There's painting and there's glazing, from what I understand. The new number is 32 grand. Is there any way of spreading that over?
Yes,
over the
certainly.
years?
To get the painting would be the most important thing, inside and out, and then do the glazing the next year. That would be fine. I think that would be acceptable.
Is that acceptable?
Yeah?
It is at the risk of being, appearing to come back every year for a
I know. We'll start the same dynamic,
but-
yeah.
we'll take what we can.
Well,
get.
if it's a historic monument in the town, it's going to require some ongoing maintenance. So maybe we get it over in 2 years and then it doesn't need maintenance for another 3 years. But you're going to have to come back again, I'm sure, for something, right?
Yes.
Right. So if you maintain a historic monument in the town, it's going to require that over time.
True enough.
The second question I have is historic register, the National Historic Register. Has any activity been pursued around that? Because I know that we have other buildings in town here that are part of the historic register, and if this one is such a great historic monument, why isn't it as well?
I don't know how to, if Dave Gibbs were here, another member of our board, that's his purview. We have a number of dwellings and structures in town that are National Register eligible, and some are listed, and there are many others that haven't been, but have been deemed eligible by the Farmstead survey work we did back in 2001.
Has he looked into grants too? Are there grants available?
We have, without any, bricks and mortar money is difficult to come by for that kind of thing, particularly without adaptive reuse.
So can you come back to us on the historic register and
Yes.
give us some background on why it isn't? I mean, because I know there are like 3 or 4 other buildings already on the register here in town.
Certainly, I'd like to know myself.
Is there a benefit to that?
I think there is, yeah.
Grants.
I think there's grant accessibility the minute you get that, right? But
Right.
short
There
of
are
that,
certain,
yeah.
yes, yeah. And I believe the master plan may contain the listing of the National Register of Historic Places here in Sterling. I think that because they had a whole thing on history.
Yeah, which the school currently isn't on that list, but as to why, that's a very good question.
Any other questions, the historical?
So, Joe, are you looking to like split those two?
Yeah,
things?
yeah, I'd like to know, is it painting this year is the preference so that we can?
I would think so.
Okay.
Priority,
That
And
was
you both are in
14,000.
agreement on that and nodding?
So can you paint without glazing the windows, Joe?
I don't know.
You
That's
have
why.
to
They
glaze
have
them
to.
to paint them, and they're not the fake
Let
wooden.
them figure that out and come back to us. please.
Yeah, talk to your painter. Maybe he'll have a suggestion on
Right.
which comes first, the chicken or the egg.
Well, you can do them separately, because
Ask Alabama.
Another aspect to this is that we suspect that the paint on the building is lead-based, and so the paint that has to be put on encases it.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be stripped then?
No.
That's our understanding.
If the understanding changes, you'll let us know though, right? And that'll be another.
If that changes, the price changes.
Yeah, exactly.
Radically.
All right, well, thank you for your time.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
One more. I had one more follow-up
Oh,
question.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. How many
We're
quotes,
running out of here.
how many quotes did you receive for the work to be done? Just curious, how many
Quotes did you?
vendors did you go to?
We have one at prevailing wage, because that's the kind of contractor he is. He's
And then another that's not.
and that was like double the price. So we've gotten two, and we had another one previously that we haven't recorded,
So which ones are we dealing with? We have a 14 and an 18 grand allotment here that the windows is 18 and the painting is 14.
Chuck got those for them.
So,
Yeah, Chuck got those. The 14, I believe, it was 6 and 11.
yeah, it's a.
6 and 8.
6 and 8.
For a total.
Oh, so that's the 14.
And is that a
That's the
sole
painting.
proprietor bid, or is that
It's the same sole proprietor, doing the inside and the outside of his quote for the
All right,
inside and
it's
the
not
outside.
the much higher prevailing wage quote then.
No, that was like double the price, so.
I'm calibrated now, thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, the night is moving on. Next agenda item is review the latest omnibus budget submission. Just like to preface this with, Joe and I had the opportunity to meet with Bill and Fred last week? Yeah, last week. And review the omnibus budget that was put forth by Bill a week or so ago, and compare it to the budget template we've been utilizing, making a few changes. The sum and substance was Bill had made several changes to the omnibus budget from his previous rendition that really didn't amount to much. Unfortunately, they had been using the revenue forecast as a tool for their budgeting purposes. We also were using the revenue forecast, but we were using our rendition of it. So we had a discussion and came up to two important items that I believe Fred and Bill are actually on board with, for the time being anyway. One was removing the DPW road and sidewalk money from operations to capital. Their suggestion was to discuss that with Ryan, which we did tonight, see if he had any objections. The other was, instead of having a policy of taking $500,000 from the ambulance receipts every year, which didn't really have a basis in policy, it just happened to be. And since fiscal '22, that $500,000 has not covered the cost of the ambulance operation, that instead we actually set a policy that the ambulance receipts would be relieved into the general fund at the same amount of dollars as the budget for the ambulance operation. That in itself made a $150,000 swing on the amount of tax revenue we would need, and the swing on the paving dollars coming out of operations. Going into capital actually had another $200,000 swing. So we actually, on those two concessions, not concessions, agreements, it looks like we're heading in the right direction, and that brings our municipal spending down to the level we were looking for, which is, I think they're now at 404,000. We're looking for a 400,000 increase over last year. So they're pretty much on line. The major bugaboo now is the school departments, and we should learn more on what Wachusett Regional has got in mind come Thursday. Joe and I will be attending their roundtable with
Business and Finance Committee.
for the finance and select board and town managers for the 5 participating towns. So next week at Tuesday, we'll be able to report back to you what we found out from the school departments and be able to hone in a little tighter on where we are with the budget.
So what is the bottom line on the omnibus budget for municipal spending right now?
We're at $404,000 increase over last year.
Last year.
We were targeting
So
400.
you would typically tell me the number, but that's okay.
Yeah,
Just
we
out
were.
of curiosity, is Dave aware that his ambulance receipts are going into the general fund? Because I
Well,
think
first
he
of all,
always,
they're not Dave's funds, okay, the town funds.
I understand, but
And we would, I have no idea if Bill and Fred have advised him of that, but I'm sure they will. So they also thought it made sense to have actually a policy as opposed to a random number. So, like I say, I'm sure they'll look at it. It doesn't impact his department at all. I'm sure he'd like to know, and he will. So, that's a capsule summary.
where did they used to go,
What?
his ambulance receipts?
They used to take 500,000 and put it in general fund.
Yeah, but he had more than 500,000,
He
so
does.
where did the rest of the money go?
It sits in a reserve
In the
fund.
ambulance reserve fund.
Yeah, and it just sits there, okay? And that is part of the fund that they're utilizing to pay the 150,000 this year towards the purpose of the
Additional
The
fund?
ambulance.
paying the ambulance,
Which is 140K this year.
which will be every year for 3 years, okay? So,
Well, we paid one already last year.
Oh, we did?
Yes, we're
Okay.
paying 140 this year, and the balance will come due next year.
100 grand or whatever
So
it is,
that's
okay.
debt service, right?
What's that?
Debt service you're talking about there?
No.
We're the debt provider, okay? Remember, we funded it out of capital last year.
So there is
So
no
they're-
debt service.
They're repaying capital on a 3-year basis. They
Oh,
put
okay.
150K into it last year, they're doing 140K this year, and the balance will come next fiscal year.
So there was no impact on the taxpayer.
We're just repaying capital.
You're just repaying the capital fund. So we paid for the ambulance and they're repaying. it.
Yes,
That is
the
correct.
capital.
But if we
budget committee-
use it all for operational, they won't repay the capital fund, right?
Use
This, in '25.
Their receipts exceed their costs.
But you're proposing that they won't anymore.
No, I'm not proposing that. I'm proposing that we take out the same amount of money out of the receipts of their operating budget. Their receipts on a yearly basis exceed their operating budget.
So
That makes sense?
that'll still go in,
So-
that excess will go into
Yeah.
their reserve fund.
So let's say they bring in, I'll pick a number, 700,000 in receipts. Their operating budget is 650. They have a residual of 50,000 that stays in there, okay? The receipts exceed the budget. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I just thought that the budget in 25 for ambulance was close to the 650.
It is. But if you recall also, they're raising the rates for the ambulance to, by $50, which is a sizable amount if you're making 300 calls. Okay, oh, a lot of money.
So the other comment, I guess, wrapping up the discussion that you and I had with Bill and Fred is, that was then, and then we heard from Ryan tonight, so we have a bit of, refiguring to do here. Because we were banking on 100K plus the fair share plus the Chapter 90 equaling the 800K, and Ryan kind of reset that tonight for us. That's not
Well,
That's why I was concerned that Dave be part of the discussion, because he follows his budget in detail like Ryan does, and.
Very much so.
Yeah.
He does a great job of managing,
So.
as does Ryan. All the guys do.
But we need, as I mentioned to him at least twice, we need a long-range plan, and you need to lay it out, okay?
But-
Because
These department heads should be informed as to what we're doing too, or what we're thinking about with
they are.
the TA. I hope so. I don't know if
Well,
that's true.
money,
I don't know if they'd agree with you. That's not what I've heard.
And I think you heard it in spades tonight, right?
so
Well-
that's why we have them here, and that's why we talked to Bill and Fred. Okay, moving monies around internally within the town is not the purview of the managers in the town. They run their operational departments, they know what they need capital-wise. As to how it gets funded, that is, A, really not their purview, and B, really not their concern. Their concern, and it should be 100%, how do I run this department the best possible way I can for the money I have, period. How it gets funded, collecting taxes, collecting local receipts, that's all up to people we pay here, okay?
And our responsibility is to figure out how to get all those things provisioned at the lowest cost to the taxpayer, the lowest overall cost to the taxpayer.
And I'll
Yeah,
work
that's all
with them.
true.
What's that?
That's all true what you're saying. But when you make a change to someone's budget, you don't tell them. And it's a large sum of money, and you're removing funds, that's not necessarily how they perceive it.
How did I change the budget? He doesn't have a cash budget. He has an operating budget and a capital budget. He doesn't have a cash reserve budget.
I didn't say that.
No, you said I changed his budget. We haven't changed anything in his budget. I didn't. Did you
didn't.
take a dollar out of his operating budget?
Nothing,
How about his capital budget?
nothing.
Okay, his budgets are the same, Paul. It's how does it get funded changed.
Right.
That, he doesn't determine how things get funded.
So he submits a line item, right?
Yeah.
Because he has to submit a budget,
Yeah.
and submits capital, right? And that line item that had X amount of money in it, and you decide, well, I'm gonna move it over here to a different part of where I wanna fund it,
Yeah,
and he doesn't know that you moved it over there.
okay.
Yeah, you're equating budget like saying, well, you're getting the same dollars, but he's still, for him, when he puts budget, it's still a change.
You lost me.
Well, he
Okay,
referred
I-
to the
you-
bonding discussion.
Well, bonding plays into it, yeah, so it's moving something from operational to capital.
Which we did. With
That's
Ryan.
what I just said.
With-
That's what I
with-
just said.
That's what he's trying to
No,
say.
That's
we,
exactly what I said.
No, but what he's
okay,
trying
what
to
did you say?
Well, Ryan's
How did
just,
that affect his operating budget?
what Ryan's just finding out today. That's what he's trying to say.
Yeah.
He should have come to a finance meeting and find out that minute that the funding source has moved to another item.
Ryan is
So, this is administrative. So I think Bill should have had that conversation with Ryan prior.
If you'll notice, Ryan has had
We're
absolutely
making a
no.
liaison.
Exactly.
We did too.
Ryan has had absolutely no objection to where the money comes from. He's the one who said that. That's not his job.
No, I'm not saying he's objective, but he shouldn't find out at the meeting. The conversation
He
should
took
happen.
100,000 and moved it over here. As he pointed out, he doesn't care because it's not his objective. Just like the fire chief, he doesn't get any operating money out of the ambulance receipts, not a dime.
I'm trying to help you understand, but
You
I'm not doing a
can't.
good job of it.
No, you're not.
I'm doing a terrible job. I know. I can tell it's falling on deaf ears.
It is. Okay, now that we've concluded that, any other questions on the omnibus budget? Okay.
None other than, now Ryan changed the ground rules on us tonight, and we have to figure that new set of numbers out, Paul. So I don't have an answer yet. George doesn't have an answer yet. We heard new news tonight.
But are you saying that that's affecting omnibus, or is that affecting
I have no
capital?
idea yet.
Capital,
Might affect
because,
capital.
I would suspect it's going to affect capital.
yeah, because his rodent site, what's so comical, Paul?
You just made my point for me. You just slam dunked for me. Thank
What
you.
is your point?
It's the open lines of communication. It's just, sorry?
I'm not sure what you're saying.
I know.
No, why are we supposed to discuss how things are funded with our managers? What they're concerned with is their budget getting funded? None of them care whether it comes from taxes, local receipts, from the government, okay? None of them. Nor should they, Paul. Maybe
You're very presumptuous.
No.
You presume what people care or don't care, or what they think or what they don't think. I would never presume
I think,
what someone else thinks or cares about.
Apparently, you just don't understand finance.
So now you're going to attack me personally.
No.
So now you're
I'm
making
trying
it
to-
a personal attack
No,
on me.
I'm tr-
This is my point. Again,
I'm trying
my
to-
point.
I'm
You're
trying
making
to-
it a personal attack
Well, I'm
on me.
trying to
You're going to tell me I don't understand personal finance?
I'm trying to
or
educate.
commercial finance?
I'm
You-
trying to
you should
educate
stop
you.
right
Can
now.
can I call to order?
You should stop.
Call to order, call to
You
order,
should stop.
call to
can we
order.
call
Don't
time?
tell me what I understand or don't
I'm
understand.
not, I'm trying to educate
Call to
you.
order, call to order.
Call time.
Yes, everybody take a breath.
Call time, please.
This is a conversation that can happen at
So
another time when
I
I
think-
can go to bed.
I'd
is no
like
conversation
to, I'd
here.
like to
No, there isn't. He
suggest
doesn't
that
talk.
going forward, we work a little bit more on our lines of communication and the work of our liaisons, but because I do see how it could have been interpreted by Ryan when we were talking about the omnibus budget and we were talking about zeroing out that line. He may not have been privy to the prior or the post conversation when we talked about capital budget and we talked about putting that amount back in. So I can see where Paul says that we may not always be communicating to the max simply because we are talking two buckets, and if you're only aware of something getting taken out of this budget, you may not have been privy to the conversation that it was going into that budget. So that's, I think, where the concern lies that Paul was trying to express. I don't think we need to throw spears at one another over this. I think that what we need to say is we need to work on the process going forward.
Perfect. Okay, I think Ryan understood it. Maybe he didn't. I'll go
Let it
talk
go.
to him tomorrow. Any more on the omnibus budget submissions?
So will there be a finalized one? Are we close to a finalized omnibus budget? With the exception of the schools, I understand. But as far as municipal spending, that 13 million, whatever that number was that I calculated, 707, is good?
What did we put in for this school?
Bill's numbers,
Yeah, Bill has the numbers in there.
which is
So-
essentially for Montechusett is the Chapter 70 minimum required contribution plus 35,000, which is pretty standard for them. And he put in, I think, a 5% increase. Do you have it there? For WRSD.
So we basically achieved our goal for the municipal spending, though. We said our
4%.
goal was
Yeah.
400,000,
Yeah, the
we
4%
increased by 404,000, the amount is 13,705,992. We're there for that. Now, the big unknown is
Yeah.
the schools,
But-
and we still need to work on that. And
But Liz, I want to be clear, I don't think until all the numbers get settled, we're settled on an omnibus budget yet. There's going to be more changes here, okay? And we're
from the
gonna-
different department heads, you think?
I think one's in play, and that's DPW. And I think we have to deal with figuring out how to fund what Ryan wants to do with
Okay.
the new expectations. And I
Okay.
don't know where that discussion's gonna land yet.
Okay.
I think that has to be figured out.
All right,
So
I'm just trying
I
to
think-
find out if we're there yet or
I
not.
think in
Fine.
many other respects, the omnibus budget is fairly solid in a lot of areas on it, but there are a couple of areas that, if we bond more in order to get Ryan more money to do something, it is going to have a minor effect on the omnibus budget because that financing number has to come into play. on the
Okay.
omnibus.
Bill doesn't have the final number on the insurance yet.
Right.
Oh, that's right, that's a biggie.
Big
Thank
one.
you.
It's,
Yep.
he's zeroing in, but it's not done yet.
Now, the other thing we talked to Bill about is he has kept a new firefighter and all of his benefits within the omnibus budget. We've already discussed that at town meeting, any new hires need to be self-sufficient in their own warrant article.
Right.
Okay. So the budget he is actually presenting right now is overextended. It's over the available monies, according to the revenue forecast. If you extract the the new firefighter, it then comes back to, virtually zero, with no excess levy capacity left. But it's within the confines of 2.5, as we've defined the revenue forecast that was given to us. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay? So those are two things that have to be discussed as we move along too, is what is going to be the position on hiring a new firefighter. When we finalize other numbers, it's always going to have to circle back to, can that position actually be funded within the confines of 2.5? And if that position takes precedence over something else, because that position with the benefits comes out to around $100,000 in cost, what else is going to have to be sacrificed in order to maintain that new position? So we're going to have to circle back to that at some time, Liz. Okay? When the other numbers get firmed up.
So the
Well, at least we
the
know what our
budget she was
unknowns are.
looking at, that gives us 400,000 of leeway in this.
Ours has the firefighter extracted.
Right.
Bill has maintained the firefighter and his benefits within his presentation.
Right.
That's a $100,000 delta,
Okay.
right off the bat.
But which one gave us the 400,000 leeway?
With that.
There is no
With the
leeway
Well, I mean,
Ceiling.
ceiling,
for municipal spending.
Right.
That's without the firefighter,
that's with,
That gets us there.
which is the way it would have to be presented at town meeting, without the firefighter.
That's a new, so the omnibus budget will be separate from the article on the firefighter. So when it gets presented at town meeting, the omnibus will not show that in there. However, if that firefighter gets voted in the affirmative, it will have to get added to the omnibus
right.
through raise and appropriate, because that's how it's gonna happen.
So when we set ourselves a target of 400,000 or 500,000,
There was an existing staffing essentially.
what,
You take the town a snapshot of last year, these are the people that are doing the project.
no, I thought that was a target to give us some leeway between our ceiling and our 2.5, needing a 2.5.
It is,
Well, it is.
it is.
And we wanted to have, was it 400 or 500?
500.
500, okay. So that 500 should be, if that was our target to keep us whole, then the budget plus the new firefighter should be 500,000 under
No,
that
that
goal.
was predicated on the schools being 400 also. And that isn't happening. Okay? They're eating up the vast majority of what we would have had for an excess levy capacity. There's two facets in this. There's the municipal and the schools. the schools are still way over the 400, which was what we were hoping. The whole philosophy was, we had 800,000 to spend, and if schools are 50%, municipals 50%, pretty easy, split the 800 in half, okay? Well, that isn't happening, unfortunately. Well, we don't know. I'm saying that before we even heard what's gonna happen on Thursday. Maybe we'll be pleasantly surprised. Any more on omnibus? All right. The next one, capital request financing matrix. I'll turn that over to you guys.
Okay, so last time we talked about trying to have one person update so that we don't get into the hassle of having multiple versions around. And Joe has come up with a pivot table that he would like to present here.
Yeah, I'd like to modernize it and get it to one form and one quasi-database format as well, so we can pivot whatever spin we want on that and whatever view we want on it. I have taken every piece of data that I have from Lynn, from Liz, from past warrant articles, and I've reconciled the data table against that so we can pivot. We can get the reports in the format that talk to us about what are we going to use as funding sources in any fiscal year we desire, or we can look at the entire 7-year history of it, the way that we've been used to looking at it. So my proposal is we use that data format moving forward. It's easy to make adjustments in it. It's easy to add new items to it. And it's easy to convey changes that way, rather than having a bunch of loose spreadsheets running around that are all different. So that's my proposal, is we keep it that way.
I guess, I think most important is to just have one, so, and I can see some benefits to having it in the pivot table, although I must admit I'm not totally comfortable with, because I'm not used to using pivot tables, but it keeps all your data in one place. It does allow you to report it or format it differently quite easily.
And I will point out as well, in that same bundle, the entire data table is in there and it's sortable. So you can actually look at all the raw data, you can sort all the raw data in any fashion you desire. If you don't want to pivot it out, you can segment out FY25 only data and look at that in the data table, and it's still there, still all there.
You can filter on a lot of things, which is kind of
absolutely.
nice.
It's very flexible.
Quite frankly, I'm not so much concerned if it's a pivot table or not a pivot table. What I'm concerned about is the data going in is accurate, and that's where we seem to have stumbled.
Yes.
So we've got to work on that process.
Yeah. So I would invite you to look at that, and I invite comments from everybody. If I don't have a number right, tell me about it, and it will get right, okay? But it has to be something that's reasonably locked down so that there are not 5 versions of truth running around on it. So that's my request.
I'm not sure that there were 5 versions of truth. I think that there were 5 sets of eyeglasses looking at a version of truth. And that's where I thought it was concerning, because I was tired of getting paper snowflakes.
And so some of the things that you've been doing too, in terms of pulling things forward so you can bundle them together for bonding and stuff. That's when I was looking today at what I thought was 350,000 or something,
Right.
It was really 30,001. So, those kind of things, we just have to make sure that we understand. Does that impact Ryan in any way? Does that mean he gets his money faster? Does it mean, that is one of the biggest things that I have trouble with, even with the presentation on the capital plan. They always seem to disregard the bonding thing, and trying to understand what we have out there And as you said, we have a 2-year plan, not a 5-year plan.
We
And
have a 2-year.
all express the same concern. We never get to talking about the whole
Right.
bundle. And how we bond that, or if we bond that, has a big impact. And we never talk about that part of it. And we don't track it very well either. I've asked Fred for, well, how do I get reports on, how is this gonna impact if we bond this or whatever? And it's like, if it's bonded, it goes away.
No, it shows up in debt
It shows up in
service.
debt service.
Yeah,
That's where-
it
that's
shows up
where you
in
get
debt
the
service,
impact.
But I mean, we don't track the projects anymore. Like if you ask them for a report on the
It's not real, I'll make a comment, it's not really our job to track performance against money that we've allocated. That's up to the heads of departments. They got appropriated money to manage that on a day-to-day basis. So I don't look in the rearview mirror. I'm more worried about, we have a 2-year, maybe we have a 1.5-year capital plan right now, and we need a 5-year plan.
Right.
I hope I hammer that home with Ryan tonight. We need a long-range plan here, and we don't. I see Paul nodding his head. I don't see it, you know. And there was nothing like doing the pivot table to point out I'll flip from 25 to 26 to 27, 28, 29, and I found the whole frame went like that, okay, when you flip through the years, meaning we have no vision out in 29 right now. Okay? It was crystal clear after doing that. And it's true, we don't. And we as a capital budget committee, that's our goal, to work with Bill, with Fred, department heads, to gain a long-range capital plan.
Because their capital budget request form does include 5 years out.
Yeah.
And when you look at what gets returned, we got mostly 25s. There are a few departments who gave us some 26s and 27s, and that was it.
Yeah.
And I think it's a conversation we need to have with department heads in terms of, we're thinking in this 5-year timeline, and we're trying to get you to think that way too.
Yeah. We're there for you, we just need to know what we're there for. That's the problem, okay?
Yeah. And I think, it's gonna be a stretch for some of these department heads to come to that.
Liz, it's a stretch for any manager to try and look
Yeah,
at anything other than what's right in front of me right now.
even from
okay?
Ryan's conversation, it was really clear that he's struggling with just the road part in terms of putting some numbers onto what that 5-year plan is. So, yeah. All right.
I'll make one other, I'm gonna switch gears from that pivot to the omnibus, because I got requests for, can you make the omnibus? Yes, I did it today, okay? So I have the omnibus to your request, I
Yes.
think Liz was. Yes,
you.
we can do that. It's just a data table, right? And it reflects the current actual budgeted for FY '25 and forecast as a way to look at things,
Yeah.
okay? And you can select into actual, budget, or forecast. and flip it any way.
One thing you had before, that I liked a lot, was you had the different reserve funds and where they started and how much was
Oh, yeah,
allocated
that fell off.
and where they ended.
I can do, well, they didn't fall off, it's just I didn't do it yet.
Okay.
And I started playing around and I don't know how to do it.
I'll be done, okay, it's just I didn't do it yet, okay, all right, so.
Okay. All right, well, I would vote to, I think we need to discuss it with Bill and Fred, but
Well, this is for us, this is for us,
This
it
is our
can be for
tool.
them too, okay?
We need one that we're all using, and they're a part of the team.
And
Yes,
I'm
they start out
I'm more
by,
than happy to share anything we do
yeah,
with anybody.
But
in
I-
town, okay?
yeah, I know. I just need to have that discussion with Bill, because where we got off was I took stuff from his summary that wasn't accurate. That obviously he used the last one we ended up with the year before, and I took it as gospel instead of going back to the request.
I'll use
So-
a prime example, Lynn, and that is, there was snow retention for the library in some plan at one point in time for X amount of dollars. That's evidently no longer in anybody's plan. But it is reflected as a placeholder, and what we're collecting is data with no funding behind it right now. So it's there.
It was already done,
Yeah.
Oh, it was already done?
years ago.
Yeah.
How did that get in the, never mind. Okay.
Valerie?
But, yeah, we need to, it's not just us. That's where we get,
I can agree to be
Disconnected.
the single data source, as long as everybody on the committee here agrees. Tell me when you see a mistake, and it'll get fixed, okay? And the data table will get updated, and I can update you all on the data table, but there's one librarian for the data that
Right,
way,
right.
okay? And that's the.
and that's
term.
why Bill's an important key, because he's the one who's talking to the department heads and has the first knowledge of something that changes very often.
But it's not meant to control Bill in any way.
No.
It's meant to.
Make sure
You
that
need
we're,
if you want to reflect a change, Bill, tell us about it. We'll reflect a change. And then we'll argue about whether we like it or not.
so that he needs to kind of buy into, and let his opinion, if there's things he doesn't like about this or he wants it different,
Tell us about it.
Right, so that needs to be a discussion. I'll try to, when you met with Bill and Fred, did you just call and say, can I arrange a time to meet?
Yeah.
Okay.
We just said, hey,
Pick a
rather
time.
than 23 emails back and forth, can we
Yeah.
spend an hour together and discuss a couple ideas? And the answer was yes. So we did.
Because this is your document, and your ability to do this, because I couldn't do it. I'd like you to be at that meeting, but before we decide, based on me and you, that this is the way we should go, anybody else have any opinions on whether we use a pivot table or whether we stick to the old Excel spreadsheet or anything?
I actually like the pivot table. I was looking through it earlier today. I didn't spend a lot of time. My time is limited, so, but I actually like the pivot table and the collection of data. But I still think, I'm going back to Paul's targets, we need to align what our targets are each year and try to make sure we either meet or at least, that's our ceiling,
Yeah,
so we don't exceed, so.
yeah, I'd like to have some.
We need
targets
to make
kill.
some kind of definition,
Yeah, and if we could incorporate them as part of our
absolutely.
table data, that would be great, And that's what I kind of liked about this, is you could separate out water and just look at it if you wanted to, and, so that you could pull different things, which, regardless that I'm not smart enough to know how to do it, I can see the benefit of having it in like a pivot table.
Yeah. It's just nice to be able to just click on something and have the other stuff you're not concerned about go away.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Which you can.
Okay,
So in closing on that, since I'm working on the formatting on the pivot table for the omnibus, you will see in the next day or two a version of that coming around that you can look at and tell me what I didn't do right. Okay?
are you thinking of trying to combine it with this, or have a totally separate spreadsheet?
We can have a separate discussion about that. Today, it's separate, okay? Tomorrow, it could be together because the pivot table can handle multiple tables, but I'm not sure we're ready for that.
Yeah, no, sometimes you get too complicated.
Yeah, I'd
and
rather
it's,
separate, and then some summary with targets.
Yeah. The data table for the capital is relatively short. The data table for the omnibus is 600 lines long, so it's
Oh,
much,
yeah, it's much bigger.
it's much harder to analyze 5 years' worth of data with that many departments without getting a very large data table associated with it.
Joe, do you have the DPW new facility in there?
Yes.
I have whatever we've been told about so far in there, yes.
Like 5 years out, is it in multi-millions?
That's what I was
Yeah.
saying. We have a 1 year, 1.5 year plan.
Because it seemed like he was saying that it seems like they're gonna go forward.
No,
minimum.
they're going forward with the 50K in
Yeah,
a
but-
committee, they're putting together to figure out
But I mean,
what to do with the 50K and what's the most prudent use of that. And then also to figure out what is the bigger amount of money
Yeah.
coming later
yeah,
on.
that's gonna be the 5 years plan, I mean,
Yeah.
that'll dominate.
So that underscores two areas. I am very concerned capital-wise about that expenditure for the town and figuring out where does that fit in the capital 5-year horizon, because, another year's gonna click by and we're gonna be projecting 2030 on our capital plan, and we better have something. And the other one is a discussion with Bill, and I think we really need to have this about the downtown renovation, because that's the other big nut that is floating around here without much
They keep saying
numbers
ARPA.
associated. Well, ARPA is only,
It's
ARPA
done,
has
right?
the time horizon that I think ends in 2026, so not
Yeah.
that far away, okay?
I know.
You have to use it or lose it in that time frame, and I almost guarantee you downtown renovation's gonna go on beyond that. And it's a very limited amount of money left on that compared to the task at hand. So we don't, I guess the point I'm trying to make is that is another big item that is talked about a lot, but not talked about in numbers that are on a plan, and we need to.
Who was responsible for that project? The
Town
downtown
administrator. I
revitalization?
guess it would be town administrator.
Planning, the town planner, the town administrator, a bunch of executives that are gonna do it, but it's our responsibility to bookkeep it
Right.
with a horizon here to figure out how are we gonna afford all of
Yeah,
these
I've just never
plans.
seen anything that shows what's in the plan. What is the project, so to speak, you
Right.
know?
And that's what we need to get into our 5-year capital plan and possibly longer, because that may go into that area of discussion we had with the UMass person, what's the value of a 10-year plan? Well, on many things it's probably worthless, but on something that may take 10 years and you have a vision on it, maybe that is the one thing that goes out that far. I don't know.
They're gonna work on signage, I know, signage, but some of the things, the road work has to come first so that they don't tear up things. Like signage, lighting,
Order of operations is critical.
All right, are we ready to move on from the Capitol?
Yep.
Okay, so the next agenda item, setting the next meeting. So let's set that for next Tuesday?
you can't, is that March 5th?
Primary day.
Ah,
Yeah.
Had a whole discussion about that.
okay, if there are any other days that are amenable other than Tuesday for everybody? I'm pretty open,
For next week.
yeah. I'm open. Joe?
I'm open.
I'm
Okay.
open
Christine can't do
Wednesday.
Wednesdays,
Oh, that's right.
right, Chris? Christine, you still there? No.
Too boogie. I'm open Wednesday and Thursday.
What was that, Liz?
Wednesday and Thursday.
What night is Steve Wallace's Economic Development Committee and Town Planning meeting? Dick, do you know? Is that the 6th? Is that Wednesday night?
I can look at the Sterling calendar.
Yeah, I was
They
just
meet
gonna-
during the day, though.
I don't know.
You don't know?
They
Okay.
might meet during the day.
No, it's 6:30. There's one 6:30 at night and there's one Saturday morning.
The 6th and the 9th.
The 6th and the 9th, so Wednesday night,
Is out.
I think possibly is out because
Liz got the calendar up.
I've got the calendar up here. What do you need now? The 5th?
Yeah, the 6th
The
is
6th?
the Economic Development Public Forum at 6:30. Yeah, and then on the 7th,
I would encourage
Second.
attendance.
I might be on the
at
wrong
that.
month, let me check.
the 7th is Planning Board meeting, 6:30 to 7.
Hang on, I'm on the wrong. March, okay, better. All right. Yeah, there's nothing on the 5th. Economic Development is on Wednesday, and the Fair Committee meeting's on Wednesday. Thursday is Planning Board and Planning Board, 2 Planning Board.
No, they just uploaded incorrectly.
Okay, so,
That's only a half-hour
Are you concerned about the planning board meeting?
No.
No, okay. So
So
we could
go
do
with
it,
Thursday?
Thursday night's fine.
March the
Hey.
7th, Thursday,
Yeah.
March the 7th, good for me.
Is it Thursday?
I can only make Tuesday, but that's fine.
Paul?
Yeah.
I'm good.
Thursday? Mark? Okay, he and Christine,
Dropped.
Is Christina still on? Do you-
no, she left. All right, so we'll set it up for Thursday, 6:30?
Yeah.
And anybody who wants to put an agenda topic together, please get it to
so,
Joe by, let's see, if we're having a Thursday, by Sunday night.
No
No,
later
you
than
can
Monday
upload
night.
Monday night.
Okay.
do we get people that we want to, there's nobody
Tuesday
coming
night.
in or
Yeah, so
anything?
they'll let you.
Excuse me?
There's
I
no,
love it.
No,
no
we're all
departments.
done with the
We're done
departments.
with the department. I would like to discuss the presentation and feedback. I don't know whether you guys would prefer I just do that in a CBC meeting, separate from this, or whether we
Oh, the
just do it-
CIP feedback?
Yeah.
Yeah, weren't you supposed to give us a written document of what everybody gave you?
Yes.
So could we have that?
And then we can discuss
We
it
can
next
discuss it,
Thursday.
yes, but I'd like it before so that I'm not reading it while we're talking about it.
Yeah.
Okay, so that'll be an agenda item.
This is Mark, Thursday works.
Oh, okay, welcome, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
Well, I have, for some reason, this Zoom program, they don't let me unmute the audio, so I never know if you can hear me.
Well, this is,
Yeah.
this is the first we've heard from you, and we haven't heard any coughing spells.
Well, that's why I wanted to make sure it was muted.
Well, you did a good job.
Okay, CIP preso feedback.
Yeah.
All right, so try to get Joe any agenda items by Sunday night.
What
I
about
would-
this, your article?
No, we gotta vote on that today because it's due this week.
Oh, yeah, it's due.
So I was gonna put that under old
Right.
business.
Okay, let's move on to,
Could I just suggest one more thing for the agenda? I would like to know what our timeline is for when we're gonna get this all settled, because when do we have to finalize the warrant?
well, Joe and I got an understanding on this too.
The warrant closes on the 15th of March.
But it
However,
doesn't-
that doesn't mean it's done.
It doesn't mean anything to us,
Right,
okay?
right. That means no new entries come in.
So are we working to infinity here?
No, no, but we're
If
not
somebody wants
under,
to finish, huh?
I was under the original impression the 15th was D-Day.
So did we.
And Bill and Fred said no, because there's still a lot of discussion to do. So we have till the end of March. And then what'll happen, hopefully we'll have our
School.
final everythings, okay? And, because the school's coming, what are they scheduled, the 7th or whatever it is of March? So after them, then we can have a serious,
13th of March.
then we can have serious discussions on the budget.
The
Come on.
select board and this is in finance is March 13th for everybody's
Okay.
calendar. At a select board meeting.
Okay.
So then we'll have our final discussions after that.
Yeah, I think, I'm pretty sure.
What date is town meeting?
It's the first Monday of the month in May, the first Monday in May.
It's not on the calendar, that's just,
Not yet.
is there, I took my glasses off, I took my glasses off.
I can try to find it here.
Yeah, no, it's always the first Monday of May. So March the 13th, select board, huh?
Is that a Wednesday?
That would be
Yes.
May 6th,
That's the day.
Monday, May 6th.
Is it?
That makes sense,
March the 13th is when the schools will be.
correct.
Yes. You remember last year, Lynn? They,
Yeah.
They had it presented.
Riley and Reese.
There's one thing we probably should do too, is that there are a few things on the Capitol now that we didn't vote on, or that have changed, like the Historic Society. So we should probably look through and see if we need to refresh our vote on any of those.
So refresh capital budget votes.
I'm assuming that that's whether we recommend it on the warrant or not, so. that would be important.
All right, and Joe and I will give an update on what the school presents to us on Thursday.
If you don't decide not to attend, which you will hear it firsthand,
Yeah.
or maybe you won't hear it firsthand.
Okay,
On the audio.
any old, new, or other business?
Old business.
Liz.
Article, I submitted it to everybody for your review. I need to know, can I send it to the Meeting House News?
I recommend that it gets sent as you last updated
Can you,
it.
Thank you.
can you motion that it get
I'll
approved?
make a motion to approve.
Seconded.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully
Now we need a
April-
vote.
All in
Okay.
favor? Aye.
Aye.
I abstain.
Thank you. Thank you, Liz.
I abstain.
One extension.
Mark vote?
Mark is it?
Mark, are you there?
Yes, yeah, aye.
Okay. Okay, so,
All right.
any other new, old, medium news? Okay?
Yeah, new business, yes.
Yes.
Okay, are you done with your?
Oh,
old
yes,
business?
yes, yes, I got my
All right.
approval.
I had put out the request to everybody for FinCom questions to WRSD
Right.
for Thursday night's meeting. Now, I'll preface it with, who knows what the protocol is going to be and whether there are any questions allowed. But if there are, we ought to try and be prepared. So Lynn presented me with a question that she wanted, which is why can't you stick within the required state funding as Monty Tech does, especially since it's going up significantly while our school population is going down? Joe had a request the regional district to provide a town-by-town, school-by-school breakdown of the total district actual expenses for the most recent completed school year ending June 2023. The 14 actual expense breakdown categories would be Holden, Mount View, Mayo, Dawson, Davis Hill, Early Childhood Center. Paxton Center School, Princeton, Thomas Prince, Rutland, Naquag, Glenwood, Central Tree, Sterling, Houghton, Choxet, Wachusett Regional High School, and administration overhead is the 14 categories. Joe had another request the district to prioritize top to bottom internal reform over district town tax and fee increases. We realize it's too late for FY25, but please make this a major priority for the district and the Business and Finance Committee for FY26. George submitted too. As the student population has declined from 7026 to 6807 between FY21 and FY25, how many new teacher and staff positions have been added and why? George's second question was request a side-by-side comparison of the foundation budget as presented by DESI and the requested figures for the FY25 district budget and justifications for the discrepancies. So those are questions that we have in the wings. Should we be permitted to speak at all at the upcoming Thursday night meeting? If there are any others, please advise and we'll get them logged on the list. You are all now aware of all the questions that came in because I just rattled them off. And since we've discussed it in committee, I have sent these out, I believe, complete to the team before that.
Yeah.
And we can now discuss any of those.
So I guess my question to you as liaison to the school district is, in their latest audit report, they were told to come up with, spend to dates, actuals. And when I think we talked about this maybe in December, we were told that midway through their fiscal year, they still weren't doing that. Has there been any progress on that front?
It's a good question, we can ask them.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know that it's going to do anything for this fiscal year 25 budget, but it's going to give us a sense of comfort about anything that they're giving in answer to these questions, because some of these questions would depend upon them having created a system where they can actually do some of those comparisons that we're asking for.
It's a good question to pose.
If they're not doing it, I have no confidence in getting any of these answers.
It's an excellent question to pose.
So can you put that in email to me?
Sure.
And I will add it to the list.
Okay.
And I can't say that I witnessed the change, but I can't say that I haven't either, so,
Okay.
okay.
Yep.
I try and attend biz and finance. I can't get to all the meetings because of either this meeting or some other meeting going on
Okay.
right now. Any other inputs, questions, concerns we can discuss in open forum?
Just a point of information on state funding, just so you're aware. For transportation, we talked about this briefly before, they had originally pledged 100%
Yeah.
funding. Okay. Well, just from FY '21, they had provided 33% funding for transportation for Wachusett, not 100. The good news is in FY '25, or FY '24, because that was the last year that we had a budget for it, instead of 33%, it has come down to 24%. So in raw dollars, the school contract has actually gone up $1.4 million in that 4-year stretch for transportation. And the state monies have actually gone down
Right.
$55,000. Amazing. Okay, so I just thought I'd point that out. That's part of the reason why the allocation to the towns is exceeding the foundation budget. Remember, that was one of the uncontrollables as opposed to discretionary. Okay? So, it's amazing.
Sad.
Yeah, when you look at it, and I think I sent this Schools for Dummies around to everybody.
yeah.
on there. Yeah, when you look at it in the light of what the state contributes on a per student basis, it's roughly $5,700. And what the towns are contributing now is 11.3K. So significant disparity in what the towns are providing versus the state at this point in time. So we're not getting our tax dollars back as effectively as we would desire from the state to fund schools at this point. And that's all the
And yet it
aspects,
was the
Chapter
state.
70 and Chapter 71 for the
It was the
transportation.
state that really pushed the regionalization concept originally and held out the carrot of, we will pay for your regional transportation costs, and then they did not live up to that.
How's that worked out?
Well, it's the same reason that the Finance Committee would not support the town voting for Community Preservation Act, because the state was saying, we will fund that, and there were too many instances of the state promising one thing and doing another.
And again, that's upside down in that the state is contributing just over 2 million in transportation reimbursement.
Right.
And that,
Out of $8 million cost.
and the towns are contributing 6.3 million of that, so way lopsided.
I just was curious, the early childhood center that's in Holden, is that only available to Holden? Or is that the only pre-K we have in the region?
I don't know the particulars one. I know that it exists as a facility.
It's like Thomas Prince with their,
Choice option?
exactly. And the resident municipality has first choice. So if they have any open seats, then it's a first come, first served.
That building also serves as the headquarters building for the district as well.
Okay, any other old, new, or other business? Anything from the audience? Dick? Anything? Any questions? Okay. Future meeting, business, I guess we're all set. Any motions to adjourn?
So moved.
Seconds?
For both finance and CBC.
Let's have a vote. Adjourned.
Aye.
Aye.
All right. And that is 9:00.